What's the easiest choice you can make? Window instead of middle seat? Picking a vendor who sends a great gift basket? Outsourcing business tasks you hate? What about selling with Shopify? Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit a million orders stage. Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell. Wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/try.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah!
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
Back live on a Tuesday edition of the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. What's up, everybody? It's good to be back. What'd I miss? Well, it looks like the Phillies didn't play so well. Sixers had the Paul George presser today. And, oh, by the way, the Eagles report to training camp today. How you be, one and all? I'll tell you what, the Phillies have some people worried, it looks like, right? It feels like the Phillies have some people a little worried. Can we all relax, or is there something to be worried about? We'll get into that. You'll hear the Paul George presser coming up in about 20 minutes from now. He spoke in the 1 o'clock hour. We do have it for you. And Austin Krell, our 97.3 ESPN.com Sixers insider, was there today, so we'll get some takes from him. He actually caught up with Nick Nurse and had some interesting things to hear from Nick Nurse about all that. Frank Close has the mailbag. Adam's got football at 4. Football is back. 23 teams report today. So Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports, who covers the NFL, will be on with us coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. But, man, we got so much to dive back into, including the Phillies' loss last night. It got started a little late because of the rain delay last night, but it didn't look like the Phillies ever actually showed up in the game. A big home run early by Bryce Harper. It was absolute moonshot, by the way. But that was about it. 2 runs in the first, nothing else the rest of the night. Offense kind of silent, and people starting to ask questions about the depth of the lineup. And obviously, Ranger Suarez last night, he was good. He wasn't great. 5 1/3, 7 hits, 3 runs. Just wasn't as crisp still, I guess you could say. But, hey, you get into the 6th, 3 runs. In today's world, that's a quality start. It wasn't quite a quality. He didn't get through the 6th inning. But, there's questions about Ranger, I think, that are fair as well that we can dive into. We spent a lot of the first half of the season leading up to the All-Star break. And I think the last time we spoke, it was on a Tuesday, which was the night of the All-Star game. So the Phillies at the All-Star break, the last day I was on the air, and thanks to Josh and Nick for jumping on board while I was out the last couple of days, one of the things that I kept asking a lot of our Phillies guests, Bob and Frank and Scott Lauber and those guys, was Jim Duquette, who was on with me on Monday or Tuesday show, and I kept asking them, is it fair to assume that the efforts you got from your pitching in the first half of the season, guys like Suarez and Sanchez and Strahm and Jeff Hoffman, that you're going to get that level of performances from them in the second half? And, of course, the answer is no to that. You can't just assume those guys are going to be that good. None of them have ever put up seasons that they're having right now. None of them. Jeff Hoffman has never been this good. Matt Strahm has never been this good. Christopher Sanchez has never been this good. And Ranger Suarez has never been this good. So, no, you cannot assume that you're going to get the same second half performances from those guys as you did the first half. What turns you from a really good player, there's an all-star player, to a perennial all-star is consistency. When you are consistent, you become a perennial all-star. When you have a flash-in-the-pan season, you might make one all-star game. These guys have to show that they can become perennial all-stars. That puts you on that next level. The Phillies have an 8.5 game lead. The Braves, Whit Merrifield signed with the Braves because Ozzie Albies got hurt. Well, Merrifield got hurt before he actually played a game. So the injuries that the Braves are going through right now are almost comical. That said, they are 8.5 games behind Philadelphia in the National League East. They've lost 3 in a row, Atlanta has. You almost feel it's just an insurmountable advantage that Philadelphia has in the East. So no one's afraid about the potential of not winning the division. I don't think yet anyway. But we talked about this back in March at spring training. This season is about the big picture. And right now is the big picture getting a little blurry. Jose Alvarado, are there questions about him? Can the bullpen guys that I mentioned, Strahm and Hoffman, be as good in the second half as they were in the first half? Is the starting pitching going to hold up over the second half of the season? And what about this lineup that produced 2 runs last night? And, oh, by the way, we're not all that productive in Pittsburgh over the weekend either. They basically, and by the way, the last time we saw them at home in Philadelphia, they got beat 18-3 by the Oakland A's. So the team now has lost 4 out of 5. So I ask anybody out there, are you looking at 4 out of 5 losses and the way that they're losing these games, and are you starting to get a little bit worried about the big picture? While I was away, it's hard to keep up on everything as, on top of stuff as I generally do when I'm home. But what I did see, in the 4.5 hours in the car that I spent there and then 4.5 on the way home was a couple of interesting stories about the Phillies. One of which had to do with the fact that apparently the Phillies are not interested in Jazz Chisholm. Apparently they have no interest in Tommy Pham, and they don't feel that Brent Rooker is a fit. That's 3 guys that you can essentially cross off the list. It doesn't sound like the Phillies think they need at least those 3 guys to help the outfield. Now, it's according to the reporting that I saw, the Phillies were kind of targeting Tanner Scott, a left-handed closing type of guy. And does that suggest to you that they're starting to have some concern about Jose Alvarado? And look, I think Alvarado's been an amazing story. When they got him, he was a disaster. They had to send him down. They brought him back up, and he has turned into a key member of this bullpen during their World Series run in 2022 and their National League Championship run in 2023. And he's been solid most of this season, but he's starting to have some cracks. So the one question I would ask is, Jose Alvarado, what is Alvarado? Who is he? Because this is why I think there's reason to have legitimate concern with Alvarado, okay? See if you guys are on board with this. When you sign a bullpen arm, the very nature of signing a bullpen piece, right? The very nature of signing a bullpen piece, you don't know what you're getting. They are so erratic from year to year. There are very, very few consistent bullpen arms. You sign a guy, he's good, and then the next team gets him, and he's not so good. We saw this happen. You remember the Kansas City team that won a World Series back in, 15, 16, somewhere around there? And then some of their bullpen pieces ended up signing with Colorado, and they were just not the same pitchers. Bullpen, it's such a volatile spot because you pitch so much. You're almost every day you're being asked to go out or warm up. You're warming up. You're appearing in a game, and you're giving it everything you have for the one inning you're out there. Is it possible that Jose Alvarado is starting to become the guy who, it just is wearing down a little bit? So I definitely think that's a conversation we can have when Frank joins us for the mailbag today at 3 o'clock. 609-403-0973. Cole from LBI checks in. He says, I texted in yesterday and said the Phillies need a number 2 pitcher. I realize that's unrealistic. I think the Phillies need to shore up the bullpen for sure, and it's tough to see for me them fitting a bat in the lineup if they don't think Rooker fits. Well, Cole, I do believe we thought I think you mentioned last year at this time, you were trying to get them to get another pitcher. From my recollection, if my memory serves, you kept saying they need a number 2 pitcher, and I disagreed with you then, and I pretty much disagree with you now. I don't think that's the top need for this team, to go out and get a number 2 pitcher. Wheeler, Nola, Suarez. You might not think that Nola is a high-level pitcher. The Phillies pitching staff, Ranger Suarez has been very good in the playoffs. He's been the equivalent of a number 2 for the most part. He's actually been like a number 1 for the most part. I say it's not unnecessary if they can get an improvement. My point would be that's not their top need. So you're not going to give up assets to go get a number 2 pitcher when you have more problems. I mean, you might not like Nola, but the Phillies don't agree with you. You might not think Suarez is going to be able to keep this up. His playoff pass, it would suggest that he is a playoff performer. So I don't think the Phillies are going to give up assets to go get a top-level number 2 pitcher when they definitely need bullpen help. I think they're showing you that right now. I think the Phillies are definitely saying their actions are suggesting that they need bullpen help. I think they realize they need bullpen help. And I think they realize they can't really depend on Alvarado. They don't know if Hoffman and Strom and Kerkering can keep up what they're doing right now. So I think that the number 2 pitcher is more not a necessity. Their starting pitching has not been their problem, right? Their starting pitching has not been their problem, and you might say, hey, if Sanchez and Suarez aren't as good, then it turns into a problem. Yeah, but it's still look, last year their playoff pitching was fine. They got shut down by Arizona's bullpen. Right? Arizona's pitching and Brandon Pfaadt shut them down. We weren't sitting here looking back and saying, man, the Phillies pitching cost them. They just couldn't hit. Again, the same problem they had the year before. So I think that number 2 pitcher is basically, would it be nice to have a better option? Yeah, sure. But come on, the Phillies don't think that Nola is a problem. I'm sure right now they don't think that Suarez is a problem unless he's legitimately hurt. Now, if Suarez has some sort of injury that they're not talking about, and I don't think that's the case, then maybe. And Christopher Sanchez, quite frankly, I think the Phillies feel fine about pitching Christopher Sanchez. If, let's say, Suarez or Nola were hurt, I think the Phillies would say, we'll pitch Christopher Sanchez in the playoff games. So adding number 2 starter to the list is more of a embarrassment of riches. It's not, it's a luxury at this point. If you're saying, hey, if I'm the owner of the team and I walk into Dave Dombrowski and I say, hey, you can make 2 moves, number 2 pitcher is not going to be one of the 2. 609-403-0973. So we got that on the mix. We also will talk about this Paul George presser today, which I thought revealed a couple interesting things. The Saquon Barkley podcast that he was on with Diana Rossini, that revealed a couple interesting things. So there's a lot today. Plus the Eagles open up camp today, and of course we'll be all over that. Man, we're back. And normally this is like that time of the year where there's like, all right, what's happening, what's going on? There's just a ton going on, right? Ton going on. Mitch Koff, by the way, is in Philadelphia. He's going to meet the media tomorrow. So we got a whole bunch of stuff happening. We hope you join us. And don't forget, this Friday, join us live for our 15th anniversary party, the first one of the summer. Happy Hour Friday. We're on the road at Giuliano's in Egg Harbor Township. We hope everybody out there has a chance to stop out and see one of the Happy Hour Friday shows live on location. We'll be out there this Friday, and we just got word of where we're going to be for our second Happy Hour Friday show. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show today. But Happy Hour Friday celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash live this Friday at Giuliano's Pub and Grill, 2264 Ocean Heights Avenue. Stop out. We'll have a beer. Enter to win tickets to the Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day and Bud Light Draft Specials, $4 neutral vodka seltzers. That's all this Friday, Giuliano's. Good to be back. Hope to hear from you throughout the show on the text board, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. When we come back, you'll hear Paul George for the first time as a 76er, what he's looking forward to, how he thinks he'll fit in with Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, why he chose Philadelphia. That's next. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform. At Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SBLive.
What makes for a great vacation? Depends on who you ask. Are you looking to get away or bring everyone together? Do you want to get outside and play or see a play at the plate? Fortunately, however you operate, I'm the destination you've been looking for. The name's Missouri, but you can call me Mo. And I have just one question. What's your MO? Come see me at visitmo.com.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Coming up at 3:30 today, our Sixers insider, Austin Krell, will join us. He was at the press conference today. He got a chance to talk to Paul George. He also got the chance to talk to Nick Nurse. You got an interesting answer from Nick Nurse regarding the fit between Maxey, George, and Embiid and how it's different from having Tobias Harris in there. So you'll hear that coming up at 3:30 today on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. So right now, Paul George spoke today for the first time as a member of the Philadelphia 76ers, and we have that press conference for you now here on the Sports Bash.
I want to thank Josh and ownership for giving us the resources. We mentioned it at Tyrese's press conference. I want to thank him again for being patient and allowing us to have the ability to add Paul. And I want to reiterate what Josh said about what we've learned pretty quickly, that when you get a great player like Paul George, you also get his great family who is here today, who we got the privilege to meet during the free agency process and since, and they're already all in on Philly and very excited. But look, we're all here to win. I know Paul's here to win. Nick, myself, Elton Brand, ownership, Joel, Tyrese. This is about putting three really, really great players together and how well Paul fits with those players. I think ultimately, I'll let Paul talk about how he made his decision, but I know he's hungry to win, just like the fans of Philadelphia. And he saw this as the best place where he had a chance to win.
So me?
Yeah, all you. It's your podcast. Host.
You don't want to hear from us. Just thank Josh and Daryl for this opportunity. Definitely look forward to coming to Philly. My family looked forward to it. We felt that this was the best and next step in the phase of my career. I thought everything just aligned perfectly. where they're at and where they're trying to go and where I'm trying to get to as well. I think we got a real legitimate shot. I've always been a fan of Tyrese and Joel from afar. And Joel has secretly been one of my closest all-star game friends. And so, it kind of felt inevitable that at some point we would link up and be teammates. I'm all in. My family's here all in. And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this next opportunity.
All right, well, for questions, please start with your name, affiliation. Start with Gina.
Gina Mizell from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Hi, Paul. Welcome to Philly. You just sort of touched on it with Joel and Tyrese, but just how do you feel like you fit in with those two in particular, and just maybe how you think you can enhance their games and how they can enhance your game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Tyrese has the youth. He has the legs, the speed, the quickness, similar to when I played alongside Russ, just the opportunities he creates with his speed and his, tempo to push the ball. I think I can space the floor for him and just, be a veteran to kind of help him, from a defensive side, offensively. I think we just complement each other so well, and same goes for Joel. I've been watching their games, and I know it's tough for him a lot of times to be able to play one-on-one from the block, just because of the spacing and shooters around him. And so I'm looking forward to that, giving him a chance to play, his game and be aggressive on the block and, be able to make quick moves to go score because there is that space there. And just, being a late game performer, someone to take a lot of pressure off both of those guys, to close games out, to extend leads, to finish games. And so, I'm again, just looking forward to just being on the floor with those two because I know they'll help me a ton.
And then just in the couple of weeks since you signed your contract, just can you describe what it's been like getting to know Coach Nurse, just sort of those initial conversations sort of in these early days that you've been part of this franchise?
Yeah, it's a little early. We're still getting to know each other. But, the time I've been around him has been awesome. Again, one of those people you learn from afar and I see how hard his team plays and the respect that the players have for him goes a long ways. I was a teammate of Kawhi's, and Kawhi spoke highly of him. And so, Kawhi speaks, you listen. I've learned that. So, I have, utmost respect for Coach Nurse and looking forward to being coached.
Daryl, you mentioned the fit of these three guys together, and obviously you've done a lot of work around them, getting Kelly, getting Kyle back, getting Andre, Caleb, Eric, some of these other guys. What else do you think you need to do to get this group to the level you needed to really be the championship contender you want it to be?
Well, I was just talking to Coach Nurse, and, Joel, Paul, and Tyrese are our partners in how do we put together the right group to win this. We feel great about the players we brought in, but as folks in Philly know, I always see that a team evolves during a season. As we see things that are needed to address the team, we have draft picks that we could use. We're going to keep an open roster spot so that as we have injuries or the needs really arise where Coach Nurse sees something we need to do, we'll address those, and we feel like this is going to be a special season.
And Paul, you mentioned how you're all in on being here. Obviously, you've talked at length on your pod about sort of how negotiations went with the Clippers, but I was curious, as things played out, was there anywhere else you really thought about as a realistic option besides being in Philly once it got to that point with the Clippers, or was this sort of the place you zeroed in on, and why?
I think Philly was number one for majority of free agency. Obviously, there was other teams in play that I was contemplating on, but Philly was kind of number one because it kind of fit my game. It fit where I was at in my career, and like I said, it fit the trajectory that the team was going. And so it kind of made sense amongst the other options out there. And again, I just went with my gut feeling. They made it feel like home from day one. And so at that point, it was kind of an easy decision.
Hey, what's up, Paul? Kai Carlin, Sixers Wire, USA Today. Just how important is training camp, I feel like, going to be this upcoming season in order to kind of begin the gelling process with you, Tyrese, Joel, learning what Nick wants to run? How important is those couple of days really going to be for you to begin the season off the right way?
Real important. I think training camps in general are really important to start the season out because you want to kind of get on the same page. You want to gel. Everything you mentioned, you got to click. And you got to be on the same page to start the year out. So it'd be real important. I'm looking forward to it, to get right to it, get thrown right in it, and just be me. That's the best thing that I can do is just bring what I bring, and just do it at a high level.
And then if I could just follow up, you've obviously played with a lot of superstars in the past. I guess maybe what stands out to you about Joel? Maybe similarities, differences that maybe you see from other stars you've ever played with before?
Joel's just a hard worker. He's you can tell. I've played with them all from Russ, Kawhi. They all have the same intangibles, and that's super competitive, want to win against all odds, and work extremely hard. And so I see that same quality in Joel, which makes me excited to be alongside him out there. When you got guys that are willing to go through, I've seen it. He played through injuries. He wanted to be on the floor, and that is what's most exciting. When guys, are committed to being out there and playing hard and working hard. And so again, when it's compared to other stars that I play with, Joel has those same qualities that you look for when you want to be teammates with someone that's trying to win at a high level.
Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers. Hey, Paul, welcome to Philly. With respect to the other places you've been, Philly's a little bit different, a little bit more intense. I know you've gotten a crash course on the city and everything that comes with it, but just what has it been like for you kind of adjusting to that? And are you kind of looking forward to the opportunity to kind of be in that sort of environment?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it, honestly. At the end of the day, it's brotherly love, right? So I'm looking forward to it. I think pressure is good. I think intensity is good. And that's what you get up for. You want the fans to be fired up. You want them to, put that pressure on you to go out and perform and win games. That's our job. And so I'm looking forward to it. Be as critical and as hard as you can. I think it's going to work out for myself and for the team. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm not scared or shying away from that at any point, at any stage. That's what you look forward to.
Hi, Paul. Dave Uram from KYW News Radio. Welcome to Philadelphia. You've gone on deep playoff runs before. This organization hasn't been past the second round in 23 seasons. So what do you think are the keys to getting past that second round? And obviously you want to go deeper than that.
I think for us it's just finishing healthy.
You had to point that out.
Yeah. The interview was going so good. I think, for us, staying healthy. But again, having another closer on the floor, another, big shot maker, and just a defensive stopper. And I think just giving credit to the other guys that we have out there. I think we are a pretty deep and complete team outside of myself, Joel, and Tyrese. And so I think that should be, really what puts us over the hump. But again, it's more so just being there for those late game situations. I've been in, tough games, tough series. I know what that looks like, and kind of know how to keep a locker room together in those moments. And so, again, just using my leadership, what I've learned, and being around other guys to kind of help get us through those tough moments.
Hey, Hey guys, Lauren Rosen, Sixers.com. Josh, this one's for you. When you think about the culmination of all the work that you put in over these last few years with Daryl, with Tyrese's patience to bring Paul George to the city, what's it like to look back on the journey and realize where you've gotten to, and how excited are you for the future?
Yeah, look, I mean, I just obviously credit the front office, Daryl, Elton, Nick coming on board, Joel, Tyrese, and all of us being aligned, around, kind of where we are now with Joel, Tyrese, and just being all in, for the city in terms of doing what we're supposed to do, which is to, set the team up, for a championship run, championship caliber team, and that's kind of where we are. And obviously the journey's not done, right? We got to deliver. So I'm just, excited that I think we are set up. I mean, obviously there's a long journey. There's 82-game journey, and then there's playoffs, and everyone needs to stay healthy, but we're set up. And look, all of us are, it's hard not to be excited, right, about this team. I've been here for the last 10 years, 12 years. And, this is, amongst, if not the best team that we've had since I've been here. So, listen, we know it's a long journey. The NBA is tough. I think we have the right people, the right leadership, and, we're all in. And, as Daryl said, we're not done. Daryl and the front office have accumulated, extra PIF for, a bunch of firsts. And, we're not done as an ownership group in terms of our support. And so we're excited. Let's bring it on. Right, let's go.
We've all seen the reports, and you shared with us about bringing Dr. J with you to California to talk to Paul. What was it like for you guys to plan that meeting and then execute in such a cool way?
Well, look, when you're seeking Paul George on your team in free agency, basically you show up when you're told. We ran into a thunderstorm, so the good doctor cracked open a vodka. We hung out. It was a long journey. Paul and his family were very generous with their time. We were supposed to show up at 8. It was 11. So it was a late meeting, but it was free agency, right? And, you got to be there, and you've got you're recruiting, right? You're selling your city, your situation to someone that has a lot of options. And it was an amazing, I think there was an amazing video. The Sixers team and the Sixers front office continue to really surprise me as to how creative they are. Many Philly celebrities, many fans showed up in Paul's living room. So it was a great day. I can't say I was exhausted, but you do what you got to do. It was a lot of fun.
Paul, Austin Krell, 97.3 ESPN. You've been a part of, star-level duos throughout your career, but this is the first time where, the three guys are positionally 1, 3, 5, and they're all prior year All-Stars. I guess schematically, how does your job change at all compared to what it's been in the past?
I don't think much, honestly. I know what I'm out there to do, and that's ultimately put the ball in the basket and try to guard the best player on the other team. And so, again, with that is, at times I know that during the course of a year it's going to be a long season, but the three of us, I think, can carry a ton of that workload. I look forward to playing with such a presence in Joel. And I don't think I've played with someone at that level, at that size, that dominates. So really looking forward to what that looks like on the floor. But to answer your question, I don't think it changes much. I know what I'm here to do, and just go out there and do my job.
And you said in your pod that you wanted to stay in LA if all things were equal. I guess, what have your impressions been of Philadelphia thus far that you've been around?
It's been nice. It's been a warm welcoming since I've been here. From free dinners to, good cheesesteaks. So it's been warm welcoming. I think everywhere we've been so far has been a lot of love. you could tell the city is ready and thirsty to win. And so, already I'm ready to get to work and put the hard hat on and go out and try to compete for a championship. But it's been nothing but love since the second we've been here.
Hey, Paul, over here. Kyle Newbeck, PHLY. You mentioned the secret all-star friendship with Joel to open the presser. I'm sure you know this. He's not exactly Mr. Social, keeps like kind of a close circle. So how did that relationship come about, and how involved was he throughout this summer, other than what we saw on NBA Countdown?
It all started as a side eye. It was a side eye.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just got that read from him. I'm not much of a social guy in the all-star setting. I kind of keep to myself. And so randomly, he came to me and we just started talking, and this was all-stars, couple all-stars back. And then it got to a point where it was like, man, I look forward to talking to Joel this all-star weekend. And, the next all-star comes on and here we are again, chopping it up. How's the kids? How's this? Congratulations on shoe deal. We just, over time, just built, a friendship. And, I think what kind of hit it home is, we had a conversation before these convos even started. We had a conversation, and, it's basically like, man, he opened up to me. I don't have a lot of people I talk to. I this, I that. I keep to myself. But he was like, man, regardless of what goes on, I look at you as someone that, I want to be friends with for, long part of my life. And that was deep to me. That was deep to me because, we knew each other, but, we didn't know each other on that level yet. And for him to just open up to me, it kind of just, it felt right. Like, this is someone, obviously, that I get along with. We've spent a ton of time doing all-star games. And so just at that point on, we kind of just built a stronger relationship to where it came to this summer. We talked and, we kind of just had our ways of how this could work, what it looked like, us being out there together. And again, it just made sense. At the end of the day, it just made sense. We both were kind of at the same level of what we wanted out of it. And we felt we could have helped each other. I think our relationship's pretty strong.
And I guess, basketball-wise, you've played every role from, like, undisputed number one guy when you started out in Indiana to L.A. It was dependent on the night, right? Kawhi's healthy, Kawhi's not, whatever it is. You're changing your role a lot. I guess what would you say to Joel and Tyrese is kind of the most important thing about, being a member of, like, a big three like that and how to navigate that together?
It's easy, man. Just go win. Let's go win. Like, there's no ego with me. I think people took that out of context when we speak about my time in LA and, the second option conversation. I think people kind of took that out of context. I just want to go win. It's not about shots for me. It's not about, having the ball in my hands the whole game. It's about winning. I want to make winning plays. I know when, over a course of game, when I need to be aggressive, when I need to, raise the level. But for me, it's about winning. That's all I care about is trying to win, putting everything towards that. And that's really the conversation us three need to have, myself, Joel, and Tyrese. Whatever it takes, let's go do it. Let's get the job done. And then we just relay that to the team.
What's going on, Paul George? It's Zach Chavalala, Metro Philadelphia, Philly Sports Network. Welcome to Philly. And you mentioned earlier that you picked number 8 based on the influence of Kobe Bryant. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you could speak on his influence to you a bit and what you would like your legacy in Philadelphia to be by the time your time's here done.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Kobe is Kobe. He's one of the reasons I picked up the basketball, being a Southern California kid. The biggest influence on me. And so, obviously 13 is retired, 24 is retired. And the number 8 has an importance to me, something that every day when I put that jersey on, I needed something to remind me to go out there and be the best player that I can be. And the number 8 just, fit perfectly. Him being someone that kind of grew up here as well in Philadelphia, it just kind of has so many meanings to me, and it just felt right to wear that number. And so that's just where the idea came from. And then from a legacy standpoint, obviously if we win and get past the second round, then we're on to something good. And hopefully it's a window that we can keep winning and winning at a high level and being successful. And so no better place to do it, to win in, than Philadelphia, to me, with the fan base, just the passion that goes into sports here in Philadelphia. There's really no other place, I wanted to align with and try to win in.
Set me up perfectly. Hey, Paul. Kate Scott. I'm looking forward to calling your games here for NBC Sports Philadelphia. Really excited you're here. But yeah, going back to the meeting. At least read about what it meant to have Dr. J there for your family. Saw you with the AI T-shirt. I'm a California kid like you, but even in Cali, you hear about the Sixers and you know what it means. So what does it mean for you to now be putting on the red, white, and blue here in Philly for the Sixers?
It means a lot. It means a lot. Again, you talk about passion, you talk about intensity, and you talk about that just hard workers, that will and that desire to win. That's what got me to where I am today. Being a kid from California, grew up in a small city, I kind of wore that on my sleeves. So it fits perfectly being here in Philadelphia. So yeah, again, it comes to just perfect timing. This all came together and it's right where I want to be at this time.
And the question everybody really wants to know, we have all the the rich guys in the room now. Who really didn't want to take off their shoes at your house? Who was like really against?
Nah, it was pretty easy. It was pretty easy. Everybody was and it wasn't no house rule. I don't know even where it started. I guess one shoe came off and everyone followed. But it was funny. Thank you guys.
We're all
good
married.
home training.
We do as we're told.
We didn't know how important our socks were going to be that night. So.
We'll go to Dan than Dave. Dan Galson, Associated Press. Paul, now that it's over, is there a tinge of regret or even bitterness with how it ended in LA? You obviously would have liked to have stayed there at some point. Steve yesterday said they made you a fair offer designed to continue to win championships there. It just wasn't what you wanted. Now that it's over, how do you kind of look back at the ending of your time there?
Amazing time there. No regret. Super thankful to Steve, to Lawrence. They went out and gave me an opportunity to play home, which, at that point in time was a ton of value for myself to be able to play in front of my family, my friends, and have a legitimate shot to chase a championship every season. Obviously, injuries kind of deterred us a little bit. But just to speak on that situation as a whole, there's no ill will. Again, forever grateful for the opportunity that they gave me to come back. It didn't work out. That's business. But, I had to make the right decision for my family. And so, again, I think both sides, we had a great mutual talk as it all played out. And I felt it was great closure on the situation. I'm happy for them. They're happy for me. And I'm a Sixer now, so that's behind me.
David Murphy with the Philadelphia Inquirer. You mentioned health, obviously. It's such a big thing, but how do you actually control that? Do you have any ideas on what you three can do to kind of get through this season and put yourself in a position to really go in full steam ahead?
Well, I think just taking the pressure off, again, Joel. I think it's fair to say, Nick, we don't want to see him isolating at the top of the key. I think I can kind of help him, get through a season healthy. And again, it's just not putting so much pressure on him. Regardless of how good you feel, I think pressure causes a lot of injuries as well. When you think you have to get through and play and, have to touch every possession, and, that kind of just wears you down, especially for how physical he is. And so that's just the key is everybody do their part. We play our part, make sure we work on our bodies, conditioned, and we just, don't put that pressure on one individual to go out and win games for us.
And then, Daryl, I guess it's probably a question for you as well. I mean, is there anything you guys can do organizationally to manage the regular season in a different way from previous years?
Yeah, so Simon, in cooperation with Coach Nurse and Elton and myself, absolutely want to put together a plan to give them the best chance to be playing at their best basketball going into April. And that's something that'll be a conversation with Simon, Paul, Joel, Nick, and even Tyrese. Obviously he's had a good run and young legs, but, well, we're going to have, if we put Kyle in charge of that, he'd just say everyone plays 48 minutes. And but yeah, no, Kyle, we do have some, Eric, we've got some guys that are really great veterans, as Nick just mentioned. And so the nice thing is we have the depth to get through the regular season and focus on the playoffs.
All right, that was Paul George, Daryl Morey, and, of course, Josh Harris. You heard a little bit of the owner in there as well. Paul George's press conference, one thing I guess that stands out, the 1-3-5 that Austin Krell talked about, the fit there between those three, having the synergy. Coming up at 3:30, Austin Krell also asked Nick Nurse about the fit between Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, and how he thinks that'll all fit in. Wait till you hear the answer that he got from Nick Nurse. That's coming up in about 35 minutes from now. By the way, the Sixers did make another signing today, adding veteran guard Reggie Jackson. Pretty good player, actually. I don't know how they're going to fit all these guys in. Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon. These are three veteran players who shoot the ball handlers. Going to be interesting to see what Austin thinks about that as well. He's going to get a buyout from the Hornets. He was just traded to the, somehow indirectly this Reggie Jackson move was connected to the Buddy Hield trade. We can explain more about that coming up. You can check out our website at 973ESPN.com for that. Don't forget 15 years of the Sports Bash this Friday at Giuliano's Pub and Grill all day long, 2 to 6 specials with Bud Light. We'll see you out there. Frank Close, Phillies Mailbag next.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
3 o'clock, Sports Bash fills tonight in Minnesota. A little rain last night got it started a little late, but the Phillies never really were in that game. Well, I don't say that, but it was close, but their offense just had nothing last night. Ranger Suarez, want to get Frank's thoughts on that and more. His mailbag is posted right now at 973ESPN.com. Every Tuesday, we have the mailbag for you, brought to you by Broadley's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadley's your trusted source for heating, plumbing service, and installation for generations. Call them 609-390-3907, online at broadleys.net. Well, if you're watching the live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show, you see Frank Close. He's ready to go with this week's edition of the mailbag, Frank. And, 4 losses in 5 games, or what is it, 5? I was away, so I'm not 5 out of 7 here. Is the mailbag becoming a little bit panicky?
Actually, no. I didn't see a lot of panicking going on, but, I think fans are mainly focusing on the trade deadline, what's ahead, some of the holes that the Phillies do seem to have, although they're not many compared to a lot of teams. I think that seems to be the focus of the fans because I think they know they're not that far off from getting things right. And so those little tweaks are what they seem to be looking for.
Obviously, the offense, you had the home run from Harper last night, and that was basically it. But, there's a team that has struggled in the Pittsburgh series and last night. Are we starting to see some worry about the offense at all?
You don't like it. I think you definitely see when the Phillies face left-handed pitching, they struggle. They haven't had the right-handed bats. Usually they do okay against right-handed pitching. I mean, I think you did catch a really good Pirates team. Luis Ortiz, that's an up-and-coming arm. I spent some time when I was in Pittsburgh this last weekend listening to the local sports station, and they were really raving about him and see him as a big piece for their rotation going forward and very promising. So even before that game they lost to Ortiz, I kind of got a good scouting report on him being a really nice up-and-coming starting pitcher. But then, of course, Friday night's game was not lost because of the offense. That was lost because of the pitching. We saw the bullpen leaking a little bit of oil there. So, when you consider the different ways that they lost during the series, I don't think it's that big a deal. I mean, if they had not rebounded on Sunday and put up a crooked number against the Pirates, I might have thought a little bit differently than I do now. But I think you're seeing some ups and downs. You're seeing some hitters getting their timing back after the break. You're seeing JT Realmuto getting his feet under him, and so I don't think this is enough to panic about just yet.
Yeah, obviously, Marsh last night, I think they said a sore elbow was why he was out, but he was supposed to be back. We'll see if he's in the lineup tonight. But what do you make of some reports over the weekend, Frank? Not interested really in Brent Rooker. They don't think he's a fit. Really not interested in Jazz Chisholm. And the third name that they really didn't have a lot of interest in was Tommy Pham. So it almost sounds like outfield is not high on their list, or is there other outfielders or right-handed bats that they might be more zoned in on?
Well, when you look at the names that you mentioned, I think there are some issues with each of them. I think this is not a matter of them not wanting outfielders. I think they just don't want those outfielders. Jazz Chisholm is a nice player. He'll probably cost a lot in terms of prospects. And I think a team like the Seattle Mariners is a team that really needs the offense, and they're going to pay big to get somebody like a Jazz Chisholm. So I don't think the Phillies want to get in that Chisholm or Luis Robert Jr. They don't want to get in that kind of shopping lane because they would have to give up a lot. And when you look at what they really could use, it really is that right-handed bat that they can put in left field. And Brent Rooker, despite reports that the Phillies were interested in him before, and he certainly put on a show at Citizens Bank Park a couple weekends ago. But Rooker does not really have a defensive position. And could you throw him in the outfield? Maybe. But that's like throwing Kyle Schwarber in the outfield. And I think they would prefer to have somebody that can play some capable defense in that. So I think they're looking for an outfielder, but it'll be a right-handed bat who can play some left field, perhaps a little bit better than the name Rooker or other such big bats that don't really have a position.
I know there's a lot of questions in the mailbag we're going to get to. We got this text message earlier. It says, this one's from Colin LBI. It says he thinks the Phillies actually need a number 2 pitcher. Do you think number 2 or higher level starting pitcher is a higher priority there? Or does she think that? Maybe she could give us a better answer.
Yes, my daughter is joining me for this segment. So for those of you not watching, no, I think the Phillies do need some starting pitching depth, but they don't need it at the top of the rotation. I think what you're seeing right now is the wear and tear that comes with pitchers that threw a lot of innings. I mean, let's face it. Christopher Sanchez hasn't been bit by that bug yet, but that's way more innings than he has thrown. And you saw the likes of Suarez and Wheeler go deep into a lot of games, and they put a lot of innings on those arms. So I'm not shocked that they're a little bit banged up, and I think I'm not worried about those types of players on the Phillies roster. If you're going to look at the starting rotation, I worry about the back end a little bit more of that rotation, just because what you don't want to see is what's starting to sort of happen a little bit is the bullpen arms throwing a little bit too much, and when they throw a little bit too often, they get a little exposed.
Obviously, there's been some reports, too, that they're looking at some bullpen help. I know one of the questions in the mailbag. Let's kind of hint on that one a little bit here. We're talking with Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN. Michael says, how concerned are the Phillies about Jose Alvarado? James wants to know, Frank, what do you think the Phillies need at the deadline? He says, I think they need a bat, a high leverage reliever. So let's kind of mix that all in here. There has been some reports that Tanner Scott would be a name they'd be interested in.
Yeah, I think that those reports about Tanner Scott do give some insight. And, usually when there's some smoke, there's some fire somewhere. And I think the Phillies do want to see some additional left-handed depth in that bullpen. Now, they have Alvarado, who's really struggled lately. If you look at his last 7 appearances, he's had a 9.95 ERA and a 2.37 WHIP. I mean, that's pretty tough to take. And it was a shame because you can't take a pitcher out until they face 3 batters. And in Pittsburgh on Friday night, I just from the first pitch, I thought, well, Phillies are losing this game. Looking at how Alvarado looked, I mean, he's struggling with his command. And a lot of relievers, they go through phases. Seranthony Dominguez is one we've talked about. Super sharp for a while, and then they sort of seem to fall over the place. And a lot of those relievers that throw really hard do sort of get out of whack for a little bit. So I don't think all hope is lost for an Alvarado. But clearly they need to start at least prioritizing Matt Strahm over him in that high leverage left-handed spot of the bullpen. So the Tanner Scott idea, that might be a good arm. He's kind of really found himself as a left-handed reliever for the Miami Marlins this year, and that would help the Phillies in the back end. And I think, we're seeing that they are, as I just said, leaking a little bit of oil. And the more you leak oil, then the more you need to use the very back arms of the bullpen. And the more you use those, the more likely it is that they're going to kind of implode. You saw last night with Junior Marte, right? He's not someone who's giving you a whole lot out of that bullpen. So I think you do want to shore up those couple little spots in the bullpen as best as you can, because you don't want to take for granted any outs. And I also want to add too, I didn't write this in the mailbag, but since they changed the trade deadline, there's no more ability to make trades past July 30th, and you used to be able to make those waiver trades. So whatever you have on July 30th at the end of the day, a week from today, that's what you're stuck with for the rest of the year. So extra depth is always good.
Yeah, the Alvarado stuff, I was talking about this earlier, Frank. Relief pitchers are so volatile. They're up, they're down. And when the Phillies got him, he was a guy who had a power arm, but was erratic. They sent him to the minors. They tweaked him, and he's become a huge part of their bullpen. But these bullpen guys, they're not really dependable a lot of times. They're elite one year, they're middle of the road the next. They bounce all over the place. Are we getting to the point where Alvarado is, kind of running out of whatever was working for him? Do you have legitimate concern about Jose Alvarado?
Yeah, I think he's just lost some command, and that's something that he can work on, I think, and get back. Now, whether he has to work on it on the major league level or the minor league level, we've had those conversations in the past about Dominguez, but, I think that's just something he's going to have to work through, and I think it's something he can work through. He's not losing his velocity. Now, if Alvarado was just suddenly flat, I might worry a little bit more, but he's really got to work on that command. He's figured it out in the past. I think he'll figure it out again, but extra depth is a really good idea.
All right, a couple more questions in the mailbag with Frank Close here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, the Phillies mailbag every Tuesday here on the Sports Bash. Ed, who's in danger of being the next DFA and getting the one-way tickets out of town with the trade deadline coming up? These are going to be guys that if they bring someone in, that might have to go out.
Well, I don't think there's anybody that necessarily needs to leave the organization altogether, but I think that, if you look at the edges of the roster, that'll kind of answer that question. When you look at a Weston Wilson, I think he's a guy that you can call upon now and then out of AAA who can help you out a little bit. I think when they brought him up after Merrifield was straight released, I think they figured it, okay, we'll get a good look at him for the next couple of weeks until we figure out that piece that's going to replace him, perhaps that right-handed hitting outfielder we were just talking about a moment ago. So I think someone like that can just go to AAA and be ready for a call in case somebody gets injured. And I know that the Johan Rojas and Christian Pache question, we've been saying it since spring training. They're kind of redundant in what they offer, all glove, no bat. When Rojas came back from that short 11 days in the minor leagues, when he came back, he was showing some of those skills perhaps he was working on at AAA, and then in the last
7 games, he's been batting just 188, and there's no sign of him bunting or stealing bases in the manner that he did when he originally came up. So I see some regression there. I could see Rojas being optioned back to AAA, and they keep Apache on the roster as a glove with some speed. And then that opens up one spot perhaps for somebody who's coming in. I actually think the Phillies could add 2 bench bats if they really wanted to, just to sort of resolve some of those issues there. But I can also see at the same time Pache going back in a trade if they get an outfielder from somebody who just needs a major leaguer to throw in their lineup every day. And then of course you look to the bullpen. Junior Marte is probably the one on the furthest edge of the roster. In fact, I wouldn't even be shocked if before tonight's game we hear that he was swapped out for a fresher arm that's a AAA. I mean, we might see something there. The Phillies do have two 40-man roster spots right now that they can play with. And then Jose Ruiz, he got off to a nice start in the bullpen for the Phillies, but, his last 15 appearances, he's got a 6.91 ERA and a 1.47 WHIP, and that's not getting it done in the bullpen. So I think those two are kind of on the edge there. And, of course, if the Phillies do get some starter depth or if Taijuan Walker comes back, he's still working at that. Tyler Phillips did a fine job filling in, and, he could be someone that goes back for starting pitching depth. But I also listed four more names that are on this 40-man roster that don't necessarily need to be there. Colby Allard, someone that was starting pitching depth out of spring training. He couldn't even stay in the rotation at AAA. Max Castillo, not pitching well at AAA in the rotation. Nick Nelson seems to have fallen off the face of the earth after a couple appearances this year and one last year. And also Rodolfo Castro, if you remember him, he was acquired last year at the deadline. He's been injured. But the Phillies can put him on the 60-day IL and open up a spot there. So they've got a lot of space to work with. So I don't think they'll try to, DFA anybody, meaning, get them off the 40-man and out of sight. So, but there are definitely some spots on the roster that there is room to add players here, I believe.
Well, let me ask you, what is your are the Phillies so tied to Pache that they don't want to lose him? I mean, have they got to the point where they have to start thinking about maybe moving on from him? I mean, how much rope does he have here? I mean, it doesn't seem that the offense is coming around. I know he's a pretty good defensive player. They seemingly have that guy. And it just seems that he's taken up a roster spot and offers not much more than being a defensive replacement level player.
Well, your team probably needs that defensive replacement level player. And, he's got the skills to do that. I think if you might have to send Rojas back to AAA, which is a real possibility, then you probably want to keep him around because then you have extra center field depth because, probably that position is going to bat ninth when they're in the lineup and need to play good defense in center field. So I think he's still got some skills that are very, very helpful for a team, even if he is hitting right around the 200 mark. So I think he's somebody that could stick around. And again, if a 26-man roster, he might be number 25 or 26, but he does bring something useful, even though he doesn't hit. And if you're at full strength, he's probably not going to be in the lineup anyway. So we'll see what the Phillies bring in. So what could happen here is, whoever takes on left field, if they're a right-hand hitter that can hit lefties and righties, well, maybe that person starts every day and center field becomes mostly Brandon Marsh, but also a right-handed bat. Whether it be Pache or Rojas. And again, I think Rojas is not necessarily making the case to stay in the major leagues right now. So if he doesn't, then you might need Pache as an extra person on your bench.
All right, let's get into a couple other things real quick. The Brandon Marsh, as we know, does not play a lot against left-handers. What about Bryson Stott? What's your read on what's going on at second base?
Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. I mean, he's kind of in that. It's not technically. I don't know. Is it his sophomore year? They always say the sophomore slump. Right. When the league figures out how to pitch against you and you haven't made the adjustments back. I thought of him as a big contact guy. So I tend to think that, like when we were having this conversation not that long ago about Alec Boehm, I think he's going to snap out of it. I think he's going to go back to making the contact that he's used to making and being a very valuable part of the lineup. And it's kind of a shame because, a year ago, he seemed to be riding high on Bryson Stott. He seemed to have claimed that second base spot forever. But I think we need to see a little bit more out of that bat if we're going to see him in the major leagues. So I think they're certainly working on that. And In the meantime, certainly Edmundo Sosa can get some at bats against some of that left-handed pitching in particular, since he bats righty, and he's kind of fallen into that platoon. And what you want to do is maximize every at bat you have, especially now when as a whole the lineup can really use that. So yeah, it'd be really, really helpful if Stott got that back together, because I thought he was somebody that could even lead off for the Phillies team, because ever since they drafted him, he was one of those high contact guys, and I got to think he'll get back to it. It's just a matter of figuring out to adjust those that adjusted to you.
Well, I mean, obviously Sosa has been getting those reps at second base, and you wonder, are we just watching a straight platoon?
You know what? If that's what gets them to the playoffs and through the playoffs and helps them win a championship, that's what you got to do. And let's not forget those 93 Phillies. They had platoons in both outfield corners and second base. So, whatever gets the job done at the end of the day. And this is a performance-based game. As much as you like a guy, if you're trying to win, you got to put your best chance forward for winning that night. So I think you're going to see a little bit more of Sosa until Stott gets it going a little bit.
Yeah, Frank, I know somebody asked you in the mailbag about Spencer Howard. What a story this was. It feels that this happens to all the Phillies' top pitching prospects. They end up getting traded, they go somewhere else, and they stink. I mean, we've seen it with so many guys over the years in trades, going all the way back to the 08 Phillies era, where they kept trading,
Draybeck.
Draybeck ended up getting hurt. Carrasco, I guess, kind of made it.
Later. Much later.
Right. Kind of made it. The guy that they sent to Miami for Real Muto, I mean, he flamed out.
Sanchez.
Yes. It just seems that all of these, and it makes you think, hey, even positional players, Jason Donald, Lou Morrison, Dominic Brown. I mean, we heard so much about Phillies' top prospects. I can't think of one that they have traded away that you are regretful about. Jonathan Singleton. I mean, you could probably name more. Spencer Howard's name was in the mailbag, but it makes you wonder, should you just trade prospects and get proven players?
Yeah, there's always that fear that you're going to give up the next big star. And, I always love going back to veteran broadcaster Casey Stern, who's spent many years on TBS and MLB Network Radio. He always says prospects are cool, but parades are cooler. And I think that he's onto something there. So, you always want to hold on tight to the prospects that you have. And unfortunately, or it depends on your angle here. It could be unfortunate for the team that holds on to prospects that don't make it. It could be fortunate for the one that gets more value in return for them because they're so overvalued. And I think that's just where we're at in the game right now, that everybody needs those young, controllable players in order to make a team work. You just can't. Look at the Phillies. They spent so much money on free agents like Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, JT Realmuto. Well, it was a trade, but they signed him to that free agent deal. The pitching staff, right? The contracts are given out. You got to grow some young talent that won't cost you a lot, that is also good in order to make a playoff run. And so teams are very, very scared to give away their prospects. And it's just, I think that's just where you're at in the game. So that's why I think, right now, your number 5 through 8 prospects probably get the Phillies what they need at the trade deadline. That's why they don't even need to go big after a Jazz Chisholm or Luis Robert Jr. I think they can take advantage of the overvaluation of prospects and get something in here that will win them a championship.
Well, with a question like Matt in Sicklerville says, with this conversation, guys, would you give up a Painter to acquire Miller from Oakland? Miller's good. You're not sure what you're going to get from Painter.
Yeah, that's very, very true. He is very, very promising. And, I'll put it this way, talk about prospects you've given up. I mean, Kyle Draybeck was the untouchable prospect. You got Roy Halladay back, right? So when you get Roy Halladay, then, yeah, you're willing to give that up. Is Mason Miller that elite? Maybe. I wonder for Miller if he would end up in a rotation somewhere someday. But, yeah, I would at least think about it, but it depends what Oakland wants. I feel like the price for a Mason Miller is so astronomically high. They would want Painter as well as some other top prospects.
Yeah, we had Duquette on last week. He mentioned he doesn't think Oakland's going to trade him, essentially because, if he ends up, that he'll be more valuable to trade next year.
Yeah, that's a very, very fair point. And, of course, Oakland is running the risk of him flaming out or hurting his arm like has happened to so many prospects over the years, right? So you might lose some of your value if that happens. So it's a tough tightrope to walk. We've seen some teams hang on to players a little bit too long, and that they thought they might be able to trade for value someday, and it just hasn't worked. So it's if I'm the Athletics, I would consider trading him just because the next 3 years are essentially going to be wasted years. They don't have a place to play, really. I mean, if you look at the Phillies schedule for next year, it says ATH. Everybody was like, where the heck is ATH? Is that like Athens or something? But no, it's they're just putting down Athletics because they literally don't have a home. They're not even going to put a city to their team for the next few years until they land in Las Vegas. So
here's the audio from Duquette when he explained why Oakland probably won't trade Miller this year.
If I'm Oakland, he still has his rookie status. If he ends up being Rookie of the Year this year, they get a draft pick. The new rules that have been changed. We saw the Orioles get a draft pick this year for Gunnar Henderson being a Rookie of the Year last year. Same thing with Arizona for Corbin Carroll. So Oakland is sitting there looking at potentially another. That's a really valuable pick. I don't think Oakland can afford to trade him.
So basically saying, hey, if he wins the Rookie of the Year, because he still has this rookie status, they end up benefiting from that rather than trading him away. They would lose that possibility. So it doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense for them to even move him.
Yeah, unless the team's willing to give up a player equal to that draft pick, which could happen, but
which could be Painter, by the way.
If I'm not Oakland, I would what I would be doing right now is trying to get as many players that will be under team control and be perhaps good when they finally land in Las Vegas and try. But for right now, as they're splitting next year, when they plan to even split a stadium with a AAA team, I don't think they're going to be trying that hard.
All right, Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN.com. His mailbag is every Tuesday. Download the free mobile app and get the mailbag sent to your phone. And, of course, listen to him right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Frank, thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, that's Frank Close, of course, every Tuesday right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. Use the hashtag SB Live. We're celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. Happy Hour Friday. Throughout the summer, we're going to be at local establishments who have been kind enough to agree to have us. The first one, Giuliano's, Egg Harbor Township. We're going to be there this Friday. Stop out and have a beer with the show. Enter to win tickets to see the Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day at Citizens Bank Park. We'll have tickets that will be given away throughout the day. $3.50 Bud Light draft specials, $4 neutral vodka seltzers. Come on out, see the show, and stick around for the Phillies game afterwards. We're playing the Guardians that night. Giuliano's. We're going to be outside on the patio porch. Happy Hour Friday, celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. We also know where we're going to be for our second Happy Hour Friday stop. I'll tell you about that coming up in about 20 minutes. But now, coming up next, 97.3 ESPN.com Sixers insider Austin Krell was at the Paul George presser today. He asked Nick Nurse, how does he see Paul George fitting in with the Sixers? You'll hear that next on the Sports Bash.
It's Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Paul can kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, even if he has to be. He handles, he brings it up the floor, runs almost like almost a point guard position at times. He can almost be a secondary point guard or primary ball handler at times. I think I just need to see it play out and get him on the floor and see what it looks like. And I think, I don't know, you guys watching the game, Joel gets, throws a backdoor pass yesterday in that game. And is that because he wants to be more of a facilitator? Yes, a little bit, but he's also just making the right play. He's getting double teamed and somebody cuts and he hits him for a layup. I mean, that's what Tyrese is going to have to do. That's what Paul's going to have to do.
That was Nick Nurse today when asked by Austin Krell about the fit for Paul George in the Sixers offense, swapping him in for Tobias Harris. Kind of a funny facial expression by Nick Nurse, almost acknowledging that, yes, we're going to be a lot better. Austin Krell at NBA Krell joins us now from 97.3 ESPN.com. Let me start with your biggest takeaway from your conversation. First with Nick Nurse, because that one was not televised. No one got to see that little interaction there. But I thought he gave some interesting, revealing type of answers with some of the questions.
My biggest takeaway is that he has a long day ahead of him because he gets on a flight to Paris tonight. So it's been a long day for Nick already, and it doesn't get any shorter in the coming hours. So hopefully he gets some sleep on the plane and he can go and enjoy the Olympics. But yeah, I mean, I went there today hoping to just be able to write on like what the schematic vision is here for this big three, not just because it's a big three. There's been a lot of big threes in NBA history, but because it's the rare big three where you have one of the guys is a guard, other is a wing, other is a center. There's not a lot of homogeneity in the positions. There's not a lot of overlap in the positions. So how does that all come together? Does it happen quicker? Does it happen more, seamlessly, and all that stuff? And like, what is the schematic vision for, a guy like Paul George to just fit in there? And I mean, I wasn't expecting him to be like, we're going to run more Iverson action, or we're going to run more floppy pin downs and, or UCLA cuts. Like, I wasn't expecting that, but I was hoping for more of an idea of like, we're going to weaponize backdoor cutting a lot more here. We're going to use his shooting prowess off the catch to run different diversion actions or to run different, looks from this angle or that angle. And the answer that he gave was more so like, I have to see it play out on the court first to understand like how it's all going to look. And that's fair. Like, he didn't want to throw Tobias under the bus for having a bad season. But I think anyone with eyes can tell you, like, it's a massive, massive upgrade from Tobias Harris.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to indicate, hey, as you asked the question to Paul George, hey, the 1, 3, and the 5, you have these three positions. But one of the things I thought Nurse kind of added to the equation was, well, Paul George could be a 1, 2, 3, and 4. I mean, he could be a point. He could handle the ball. Something that Tobias Harris certainly could not do was he did not have a great handle. But the versatility that George gives them that Harris simply did not have, I think was pretty apparent in that answer as well.
Yeah, and I think they'll test some of that. There'll also be times when over the course of an 82-game season, you'll be like, tonight your job is to just run around screens and shoot. Like, we don't need you to be a high-level ball handler or serve as a point forward tonight. We just need you to shoot a lot of threes tonight. So they're going to toy with a lot of different things here. But like this team, and I was thinking about it today, and there's mixed reviews on the addition of Reggie Jackson, which happened just before the introductory press conferences. I'm not saying this is what happened, but I mean, put two and two together. Reggie Jackson loved playing with the Clippers. They credited them with saving his career after he got bought out of Detroit. Paul George was on those Clippers teams that he loved playing with. So you do the math and tell me how he ends up in Philly. I think it's kind of obvious what happened there. But like, they have guards, wings, what have you. They have more ball handling. They have more shooting than they've had in many previous off seasons. And there's a lot more of spurts of creativity here and there. And Paul is going to be in the mix of it, just like Tyrese and just like Joel will.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the Reggie Jackson. That kind of came out of right field today. He plans to join the Sixers. He'll get a buyout with the Hornets. He was kind of indirectly in that Buddy Hield move. Denver sent him in picks to Charlotte. Charlotte buys him out. Philadelphia comes here. They got Reggie Jackson, Eric Gordon, Kyle Lowry, Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey. I mean, what's the roles here? Where's the minutes?
So if you're asking me, I think this is a sign that Jared McCain will not be in the rotation. I think he is probably going to have to earn his minutes in Delaware and work on some things down there, and then they'll bring him along slowly. But I think the fact that you added another ball handler, another shooter, it's hard to make the case that Jared McCain is going to get minutes over more veteran players who head coaches are more likely to trust because of their experience. I will say this: like, Reggie Jackson had an up and down career, more known for his offense than defense. But don't just look at him as somebody who is like a nobody on defense. 6'3" with a 7-foot wingspan, I believe. The last player
that they had like that with, that type of measurable 6'3" with, with arms for days with big wingspan, that would be DeAnthony Melton. That was 6'2" with a 6'8" wingspan. I'm not saying he's defensively like DeAnthony Melton, but when you have him in the right context and in the right environment and he's motivated, there is a decent defender. There can be a decent defender in there.
No, I was pretty surprised to be able to get a player of that level to come here at this stage of the offseason that you would imagine will be a rotational 20, 25-minute a game type of player. That's a pretty big addition here. He did acknowledge they're going to keep a roster spot open for something. So what does that leave him? One more spot to still fill?
So they have technically 2 roster spots left. The minimum for the NBA is 14. You could have 13 for, I think, up to like 2 weeks at a time, or a total of 28 days over the course of a regular season. But you really have to have 14 for the most part. The maximum is 15. So I suspect they will keep the 15th man open in case trade opportunities emerge. They'll probably keep it at the minimum 14 for a while. Would be my guess. But I think maybe that's a spot for a forward to come in. And I think, like Nick even said it today, in that press conference, again, like, was not really broadcast. I think there'll be some clips shown on TV, but like Nick said, this is an opportunity for Ricky Council to step up. Like, we have all these veteran players. There are going to be nights when there are chances for Ricky Council to step up and play minutes. So the door is not closed and shut on this being a team largely of veteran, guys in their 30s, even though like Kelly and Caleb Martin and Tyrese are not in their 30s, like this is a lot of the players on this team are in their early mid late 30s. There is youth though that has a chance to be in the rotation and play some minutes for this group.
Austin Krell, 97.3 ESPN.com. Paul George was asked the same question by you about, the positional schematics of that. What did Paul George say about how he thinks he'll fit in? We heard what Nick Nurse and his thoughts on the whole pairing, but what did George say?
That's me, hunting for the hard stories, the hardcore stories, asking the same questions over and over again, hoping for a different answer. You figured me out, Mike. Paul basically said like the jab didn't change that much, and I think that's true in a lot of sense. Like, see ball, catch ball, shoot ball, defend the ball, and I think that's true in a lot of cases. But as we've seen with Team USA, it ain't so cut and dry. Like when you have this much talent and this collection of talent, it takes a little bit of time for everybody to learn this is the sweet spot. This is when he likes the backdoor cut and whatnot. But I think Paul understands, like, this is not his team. This is largely the core. The tent poles are Joel and Tyrese, and I am here to help make it easier for both of them. And he even said, like, we can see a little bit less Joel posting up or isolating at the top of the key. My job is to come in here and make his life easier and make it much more difficult for teams to throw excess bodies at him to stop him.
One thing Paul George said that, I don't know who's going to, say, hey, I have to have the ball. But he did acknowledge, hey, it doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be my team. It doesn't have to be going through me every single night. He almost acknowledged it. Hey, there are different things that I could do to help Joel not have to get the ball in the same spot every single time, which is kind of different than when Tobias was here, because Tobias just couldn't do a whole heck of a lot more than what he did. I thought that was a pretty big revelation by Paul George, acknowledging that his presence should help Joel be able to do other things.
Yeah, so it isn't that Paul is going to come in here and be some, rocket science passer. He's never been a great passer in his career. But if you're going to put your best perimeter defender on Joel, that means you have a undersized guy or a mismatch on Paul George or Tyrese Maxey. And so then it becomes a domino effect of, well, one way or another, you're a defender that you do not want to have on a star is on a star, and it hurts. So the way that you remedy that is by guarding Joel straight up with his like-sized defender and let him just go one-on-one. And I think that's going to be what teams probably have to try to do at times. They do that anyway in the regular season at times because it's the regular season and then it's another game in the 82-game schedule, and they don't care if they lose by 30 and Joel has 45 and 15. But like just schematically, like the Knicks put, for example, I use this example often in my conversations with friends, family, anyone. The Knicks guarded Joel successfully with OG Anunoby. That was their best perimeter defender. They put him on Joel because they knew that there was really not a lot of other offensive creativity elsewhere on the court. So let's run back that same scenario with Paul George now. Okay, so does that mean you put Mikal Bridges on Paul George? Okay, fine. Who's on Tyrese Maxey? That's Jalen Brunson.
Right.
Okay. Good luck. Could be Josh Hart. Okay. If Tyrese Maxey is on the perimeter, then where is Josh Hart coming in from to get the rebound? Because if they make that slap out off the offensive glass and it ends up in Tyrese Maxey's hands and Josh Hart's nowhere to be found, it's an open three.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having these types of stars and this collection of talent makes it harder for defenses to go down their pecking order and say, like, we like our options across the board. Now, like, and Tyrese even said in his own press conference, like, I want to be less switchable, meaning I want to be the guy that teams are not so hungry to switch on to me. Like, they're not looking to switch their players onto me and go to work. I want to be the guy that you don't feel so comfortable doing that.
Right.
So I do think, like, you know, there will be nights when the defense looks sketchy as they work things out and try to untwist some things that get twisted up. There will be nights where we're asking why Paul George is taking a lesser assignment. You know, a friendly reminder that no one in this fan base cares what they do in the regular season anymore. This isn't about that. They've won more than their fair share of games in the regular season. This is about what you do in the playoffs. And I think as was asked throughout the press conferences, like, how do you manage your team to get there healthy for the final 16?
That was a theme towards the end was, okay, what do you do to manage this with these guys? You got older Paul George, getting older Joel Embiid. Getting them to the finish line has not been easy in any of George's stops. And now, of course, Joel getting into his 30s here. So do you anticipate seeing a different strategy in the regular season?
Well, I think the Reggie Jackson thing, I was thinking about this in my head on the way home from the press conference. So, like, the Reggie Jackson thing is weird because you need more size and you would think another forward. And I get that. I also get that, like, as you're gaming out your rotations, okay, you take Tyrese and Joel out first, let's say. Then it's Kyle Lowry, who else? And Paul George, and now Andre Drummond. Well, I think you can do, I'd be curious to see if they do like a Kyle Lowry, Reggie Jackson backcourt with Paul George, Kelly Oubre / Caleb Martin, and Andre Drummond. And then the next rotation is Paul George out, Joel comes in with Tyrese, and, you know, it's this or that. It wouldn't surprise me if Reggie Jackson is fighting for a spot in the rotation, period, let alone, like, significant minutes. I think Kyle Lowry probably has that rotation spot locked down because he's Kyle Lowry and he has that equity with Nick Nurse. But I do think that Reggie Jackson has proven that he can be a combo guard. So, you know, as you're trying to figure out how you manage this thing, well, you have a lot of wings already. There are going to be nights where you were probably so far ahead where you're just resting guys flat out in the fourth quarter of games. I also think that they're going to be more conservative with, like, you have this situation with this injury. We need to be a little bit more aggressive with how we handle it. We're going to not, you know, if it's an ankle turned, a couple games here and there. The goal is to deliver this group to the playoffs as healthy as possible. But the more you talk to people around the league, the science seems to be like load management does not. In theory, it helps limit the risk of injury in the regular season because it puts you in bubble wrap. It does not help or change the chances of you suffering injury when you are playing every other night, physical battles for 40 plus minutes in the playoffs. So does load management actually help? And I think that's a question for the Sixers scientists and their medical staff that they behind closed doors have their opinions on. But I do think that Nick Nurse said, like, we like to use training camp as a launching board for practice. And we usually start out fast with that. And I see the way that they are assembled as a team. And I think there's a tremendous amount of depth at the center position. There's good depth at the guard position. There's decent depth at the wing spots. But I do think that they're going to, in as best they can, prepare their players to play, to play 40 minutes plus in the regular in the postseason. And I don't think you do that by load management anymore. I think you do that by making sure your guys are in the best shape possible.
More on the Sixers, of course, over at 97.3 ESPN.com, at NBA Krell, and, of course, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Austin Krell, everybody. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, there's Austin. Off-season been busy for him, and, of course, all our Sixers coverage here on the Sports Bash. All right, coming up, we heard the Sixers news, by the way. Reggie Jackson plans to sign with the 76ers. He got a contract buyout from the Hornets. We'll see what that means for them, where he'll fit in. As you heard Austin kind of explain where he thinks that fits in with the team. We got more to come, including the Eagles have reported to training camp. What does it all mean today and all that? Adam Kaplan from the Inside the Birds podcast joins me next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.
It's this with Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to Austin Krell, 97.3 ESPN.com, Sixers insider. Of course, covering the 76ers. Their offseason's been very active. I mean, they're still making moves today. And Paul George introduced to the media for the first time today, along with Tyrese Maxey, who spoke this morning, and we got Nick Nurse there as well. So you got a little bit of insight there from Austin Krell, how it all might look. Good stuff from Austin. He'll have more on our website tonight, 97.3ESPN.com. Don't forget to get the free download, the free mobile app, and you can read all of our Sixers coverage right on your phone. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. And hey, I just got back from Altoona, PA. I drove 4.5 hours, and holy mackerel, going to be back in the saddle all week long. And then Friday, I got to pick it back up for Happy Hour Friday over at Giuliano's in EHT. So stop out and celebrate 15 years of the Sports Bash. We're taking Happy Hour Friday on the road all summer long. And our first stop is at Giuliano's EHT. Stop out and have a beer with the show. Enter to win tickets to see the Smashing Pumpkins in Green Day at Citizens Bank Park. And that's Bud Light draft specials, neutral vodka seltzer specials, all during the show outside at Giuliano's, 2264 Ocean Heights Avenue in EHT. And we now know next Happy Hour Friday, we will be at Charlie's in Summers Point. They will be hosting one of our Happy Hour Friday 15-year celebrations. So thanks to Giuliano's in EHT, and now Charlie's in Summers Point will be there for Happy Hour Fridays.
97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Kaplan, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I give my heart and soul to this franchise, as so many of us do.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast here on a Tuesday. Adam Kaplan is back. We'll get his thoughts on the Eagles reporting to training camp. What does it mean? He'll explain. Plus, a couple of news and notes around the first practice tomorrow. It is expected that, of course, Nick Sirianni will speak, but we'll see what will be different this year about Nick Sirianni's training camp. Let's bring in Adam Kaplan now on Happy Hour Friday. Excuse me, on not Friday quite yet. He's on Friday's show. It's only Tuesday. What's going on, Adam?
Mike, good to talk to you. Yeah, congratulations. Wow, 15 years. That's pretty cool, man.
Can you believe it? They didn't get rid of me yet, and we got a whole.
It's funny you say that. This is my 21st anniversary as a host on Sirius XM, and we say that every year. Oh, they haven't canned me yet. Yeah, no. So look, it's tough, and the radio business is tough, but that's a great accomplishment. So very good for you, and obviously this is the time of year when teams report. So the players can't practice today, but they did report. They take a team physical. It's a big thing, Mike, because you never know what's going to happen when players report to training camp. You hope that they did everything they're supposed to be doing. Their heights and weights are taken. It sounds kind of funny, but it's more the weights. And the worst thing is when the guy shows up out of shape. Let's say he shows up 10 pounds overweight. That shouldn't happen. Like we reported, this is what happened like 2 or 3 years ago. Jordan Mailata showed up to their OTAs at let's say 402. I don't know the exact number. I think it was 402. He was told to get down to 380, and give him his credit. He did exactly that. I think he was between 375 and 380. So you want to make sure the conditioning is big. You want to make sure everybody shows up in the right condition. And then when you get to practice tomorrow, their weights are taken every day, I'm told, starting the first day of training camp. And they check the fluid levels. That's really big because you want to avoid those soft tissue injuries. So there are a lot of things that you got to get done. And by the way, tonight they have the big meeting with Nick Sirianni, and they also meet with the individual with their position coaches.
So, yeah, the players all to report, 23 teams, Eagles one of them that fully reported today, the veterans, everything there. As you mentioned, they don't really do anything, just kind of that, the overviews, the heights, the weights, and all that kind of stuff. But, the first preseason game is the Hall of Fame game next Thursday, and then the following week the Eagles will go. So what will be happening between when they report today and that first preseason game?
All right, so tomorrow, Mike, at 10 a.m., and every single practice at the NovaCare Complex is at 10 a.m., and the only thing we're going to see different, and we'll see tomorrow, and I'll be there Thursday, and our Andrew DeCecco should be there every day. And I know Mosher will go as well to some practice, so we'll have it all covered inside the Birds. But the one thing, because the Eagles have said they're going to practice more this season or the summer, but what we're expecting is probably more days. And also, maybe they don't just have. Maybe they might do an hour and 45-minute practice. So, I remember with the Rams, and I've been at their training camp every year that Sean McVay's been there. They were very quick. They would do an hour 15, hour 10. Last summer and the summer before, they had over 2-hour practices. That stunned me. That was not because they're big. They don't practice very much in season. They have very light practices, and we know that they're one of the teams that never lets their players, their veterans play, their starters play in training in preseason. So I'm interested to see is there anything that's different because of what happened last year? The Eagles choking, obviously losing 6 out of their final 7, and the awful playoff performance. I'm interested to see, Mike, is there anything noticeably different at these practices? And we're certainly going to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that Sirianni is definitely going to do a little bit of different stuff here. He's certainly being questioned a lot. The Athletic had quotes from Sirianni's media roundtable and kind of said, I didn't call the plays last year, all right? But he said, I had to help. I had to get involved in all this. What did you make of what Sirianni kind of interjected last week there?
Yeah, look, Mike, I mean, we reported this when it's actually, leading up to Kellen Moore being hired, we had heard he will no longer call plays. He'll have input, but he will not have any calls anymore. He's not making any calls. It's not his scheme. In fact, here's one thing we're going to look into, and my sense will be Kellen Moore. So, in the end, since it's Kellen Moore's scheme, and he's going to make a decision on what this offense will look like, the only thing we don't know, Mike, is who will handle the rotations. Okay, for instance, let's just say that, because we know Kenny, we've outlined this now for 3 years. One of the things we reported 3 years ago, the coaching staff was heavily involved in Kenny Gainwell's selection. and we know that Sirianni loves Gainwell. Yeah, but moving this forward here, he enters this summer on the final year of his contract. He was drafted in 21. Will Shipley was drafted in the 4th round. Well, what if Will Shipley has a great training camp, and Kellen Moore says, you know what? I don't, Nick, you love Kenny Gainwell, we like him, but we think that Will Shipley's a better fit for our offense. And that's a good, we've never talked about that before, but as you brought this up, that's something we're going to look into. We're not sure what the answer is. I don't want to guess. My sense it would be Kellen Moore's call, but we don't know that, so we're going to look into that. And that's something that's fascinating because Sirianni's it's not his scheme anymore. And the offensive coordinator, I know Nick Sirianni is sort of in charge of the coaches, but Kellen Moore should be able to play who he wants.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, as you just kind of mentioned, Sirianni will not be calling the plays. It's not his offense. What will be different about the Kellen Moore offense from the one we've seen with Nick Sirianni his first 3 seasons here in Philadelphia? We'll get our first peek of that, I guess, tomorrow, 10 a.m. It's expected they'll practice more days longer than they have under Nick Sirianni. Give us some insight on the rules. Sidney Brown placed on the active PUP list, what that means for him and other guys who might be under those designations.
Yeah, so, Mike, it's fully expected that he will go on the active PUP list. Now, let me explain. There are differences on these lists. People get confused sometimes, so I'll clear this up. So basically, Mike, before you report to practice, they don't have to do it today. And I remember sometimes when the team won't announce anything, and then all of a sudden the guy won't be practicing, and then they have to turn any transaction in terms of any reserve lists or active lists, like in terms of, okay, you mentioned PUP or NFI. Let's go to PUP. Physically unable to perform as Sidney Brown's going to go on that. He cannot go on NFI because NFI is for non-football injury or non-football illness. Those are when a guy has an injury or an illness away from the club. Like, it turned out to be a mistake. Remember Mike Patterson, a long time ago, first-round pick for the Eagles? He had his illness. He had something pretty serious off the field. So he did not go on PUP because it was not an injury, and it happened away from the complex. And you see this sometimes. Let's say, Mike, that the Eagles drafted a player, right? And his injury happened in college, and he couldn't practice early on training camp. He would go on NFI. Though it's an injury, it's kind of a misnomer. It's actually an injury, but it happened away from the club. So he would go on NFI. Now, if a player is put on reserve NFI, reserve PUP to start training camp, they're done for the season. Ryan Ramczyk, the Saints starting right tackle, is going on the reserve list. He's going to go on reserve PUP. That means he cannot play this season. The only way he could play is if he's released. So that's the unfortunate part about these lists is that if you go on a reserve list now, you're done, and you're not going to see players go on those lists, reserve lists, at all unless the team knows that the guy can't play. We're not expecting anyone else, and we expect the Sidney Brown thing to be official by tomorrow because he's coming back from ACL reconstruction. Now, one thing to keep an eye on, Mike, is when you're on active PUP, once you're able to practice, they take you off that list, but understand something. Once you're off that list, you cannot go back on. That's something that is key because, look, you better be sure that the guy could practice well when you take him off that list. And also, let's say, for instance, Sidney Brown can't practice until early September. You better be sure, or you could keep him. He goes to the reserve to start the season. They don't miss the whole season. They only miss 4 games on the revised rules on that list.
Adam, obviously, you mentioned it's light the first couple days. Then they'll kind of work their way up. But what are some of the things that you'll be keeping an eye on right off the bat in terms of positional, battles and depth spots? I mean, obviously everybody's looking at this cornerback position, but what are some of the things that you will make sure that you are keeping an eye on even in those first few light days?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because what I do when I go to training camps, and I'm making up my schedule now. I'll see at least 18 teams this summer. And I have an agenda every camp I go to, players I'm looking to see, other than talking to the coaches and front office people. I'm looking for battles. So when I go to Eagles camp Thursday, that'll be my first camp, I may go tomorrow, but I'm definitely going Thursday. But one of the things I'm going to be looking at is, okay, Mekhi Becton, I saw him in OTAs. Where is he lining up? It's funny, when Mosher dropped that news on our show, if you remember, my reaction was like, are you serious? Is he really going to play guard? I mean, he never played before. I knew he had good sourcing on it and information. I just didn't think he could do it. And I understand there's no physical play in OTAs, really. But I was kind of surprised at how good he looked, how mobile he looked playing guard. But if he's, Mike, think of it this way. If he's lining up literally at right guard, competing against Tyler Steen, who's to say Mekhi Becton won't be the starting right guard to open the season?
Yeah.
This is not when they sign him. We never thought he'd actually compete for it. Now, another part of this, the adjunct to this is, what if he doesn't even line up at right guard? Then maybe that was just done as a test, and they felt that they don't want him doing it, and then he'll be the backup left tackle. Or backup right tackle. Maybe it'll be the swing tackle. But that would be one. And early on the first week, I know the first couple practices are light because you're not allowed to practice hard. They have what's called the acclimation period. But I'm very interested to see what happens with the backup receiver jobs because they don't know who their 4, 5, and 6 will be if they keep 6. Paris Campbell's penciled in as the 3. Right now he doesn't have competition. But can anyone push him? We haven't heard anything on Austin Watkins. I know the Eagles really like him. And John Ross had a nice offseason. Can someone push Paris Campbell? So those would be some of the offensive things I'm looking for.
Right, I was going to ask, in your mind, is Paris Campbell the clear favorite number 3 receiver on this team?
100%. Because think about it, Mike. Johnny Wilson never played in the National Football League. Anais Smith never played in the National Football League. Joseph Ngata, I believe, was on their practice squad the entire season. Yes, that is correct. Never played, okay? Britton Covey, he's only a slot, barely played receiver. Shaquan Davis hasn't played. Austin Watkins is sort of like a young journeyman who's been around a little bit longer than you think with the Niners, with the Bucks, with the Browns. The Eagles saw him a couple years ago. And with the Eagles, so they just, and Jacob Harris, who I really like when he was with the Rams as a rookie. He hasn't really been the same since he had his ACL injury. None of these guys have done anything, Mike. John Ross. Look, he's been a major disappointment. You remember, he retired.
Right.
I mean, it's a really cool story. I love his talk with the media. That was pretty inspiring and a pretty cool story. But again, this guy hasn't done much in his career. So, Mike, yes, Paris Campbell. Now, if he looks terrible, if he looks like Greedy Worms did last summer for the Eagles, we were talking about him on our last show, Mike. That's a different story. But look, we know that they're going to have to bring another receiver in at some point. It doesn't have to be day one. Before the season starts, they're most likely going to need another veteran. But their hope is Johnny Wilson, Anais Smith, Jacob Harris. 2 or 3 of these guys step up and maybe push that thought process. They don't need another veteran. But right now, it's Paris Campbell's, absolutely.
They are back, and they'll be on the field tomorrow. The Eagles and Football at 4 has it covered right here, and the Inside the Birds podcast back in full swing. And, of course, you can get that on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget all their YouTube content. Check out their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. Adam Kaplan's back on Friday as the Eagles will be back on the practice field. Adam, thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
All right, Adam Kaplan. His camp tour begins tomorrow with the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, they are back. We'll keep it here for a couple of minutes because I got a lot of thoughts on the Eagles here. So Saquon Barkley is on the Scoop City podcast, which is a new Diana Rossini ditty over at The Athletic, okay? There's a lot in here. The Hard Knocks thing has really put Saquon in the crosshairs here, right? The whole situation there. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, the Hard Knocks, the call between him and Joe Shane. And we said here, look, after the phone call, Saquon Barkley knew he wasn't going back to the Giants. That was our opinion. Barkley essentially confirmed that on this Scoop City podcast, which I think was Barkley her first. It was just like it's a new podcast for her, right?
It's a new pod, but was actually the 3rd episode.
Right, but it's a new pod. So
he
it wasn't
not
the
her
first
guest,
right.
though. The first guest was Stephen Jones.
So Barkley basically goes on there and says what we all knew. After the Hard Knocks call, that was it. You could hear it in his voice. I will say this, though. I don't think Joe Shane, like people are really ripping him. He didn't want Barkley back. Joe Schoen did not want Barkley back. John Mara, the owner, wanted Barkley back. Joe Schoen, the GM, did not want Barkley back. And Barkley knew it after the Hard Knocks thing. He knew it was over between him and the Giants.
It was over after that phone call, in my opinion. So, like,
as soon as he said to go hit the market,
and if you match it, you'll come back. Like, it was over after that, because I never, in my heart, truly believed that they were going to match it, or they only wanted me for a lower price. So, like, no matter what, I probably wasn't going to go back. Like, I know my agent went back and talked to him, and, like, we gave him the opportunity, like, all right, will we match? But, like, the whole time, like, I already removed myself from that. Like, I had that conversation, and I was like, damn.
So, soon as they told him, go out on the market, he knew. The writing was on the wall. He knew what was happening here. So, what we thought when we saw Hard Knocks is accurate, right? That the Giants didn't want him back. People are acting like the Giants messed this up. The Giants didn't want him back. It's not that they didn't want him back. I don't want to say it like that. They don't want to pay him. They don't want to pay him what you had to pay a running back. Joe Schoen said, look at my team in Buffalo. Now you say Buffalo hasn't won a Super Bowl. They're a hell of a lot closer than the Giants are, right? So he's saying, guys, look what I did in Buffalo. I didn't pay a running back. Now, you might say, well, why the Eagles pay a running back? They're in a different position than the Giants are. They're in a different position than Buffalo is. The Eagles have been to a Super Bowl. Buffalo can't get there. Now, I'm not saying the difference is because they have Saquon Barkley and Buffalo didn't, but the Eagles have the luxury of spending the money on the running back. The Giants don't. So that comment from Barkley there sums up basically what we saw in the Hard Knocks. But he said that, essentially that the Giants gave everyone else deals and he never got to negotiate a new deal with the Giants. Yeah, because the Giants said, we got to get some of these other guys here and get them locked in. We can't, and it can't be you. I think what we're seeing here is that the Giants are making smart decisions now. Okay, they have a guy making prudent decisions. Now, the whole thing with Daniel Jones is a mess. I mean, poor Daniel Jones is being raked under the coals on Hard Knocks every week. The Giants don't want Daniel Jones, right? They don't want Daniel Jones. Joe Schoen said, hey, we got to see if this guy can play. We gave him the $40 million. We haven't really given him a fair shake, but everything else suggests they tried to get Drake May. They wanted to trade up to number 2. They don't want Daniel Jones there. But we can't pay Saquon Barkley because the other idiot GM gave Daniel Jones $40 million. So there's a lot in the Diana Rossini Scoop City podcast that we'll play throughout the day today and kind of get some more insight there. But I thought the Saquon, on his decision after the Hard Knocks, he said he knew it was over there. So the first thing that we're all going to be kind of watching tomorrow when the team jumps onto the field, and coupled with the audio from Diana Rossini about, I guess she was on with former Eagles quarterback Chase Daniel. Was he number 2?
He's her co-host.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they co-host this podcast together, which I got to be honest, me and Nick Earnshaw talked about this yesterday. I hate the name of this podcast.
The Scoop City? Why is it called that?
It's
because she's got the scoops.
Diana Rossini. She's the insider.
Got it.
The whole premise of the show is she's the insider. Chase Daniel reacts.
Got it. All right, Scoops. I got it. It makes sense now. But anyway, in this podcast, Rossini and Dan, I didn't realize that was the setup of the podcast. I thought it was her podcast. He was like a guest, but they're together.
Yeah, they're together.
Yeah, I know it's a new pod. It just came out. So
it's brand new.
I haven't heard.
It came out last week.
I haven't heard it yet. But in the podcast, Chase Daniel, breaking it down, talked about Sirianni being too conservative in the red zone last year, and that they lacked creativity, and that kind of grinded on Hurts a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see, as we just talked with Adam, about how the Eagles will look different. Sirianni no longer calling plays. What role Barkley has in the offense next year. That starts tomorrow. They'll be on the field tomorrow, and we'll get our first chance to see what this offense, why is it different, how does it look different, because it was clunky. It was stale, and it shouldn't be clunky and stale with the talent they have on this team.
No, it shouldn't, because you have one of the 5 best running backs in the league, right? You have arguably the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. You still have one of the best offensive lines. Yeah, Juergens and right guard are questions, but Dickerson, Mailata, and Johnson are among the best at their positions. So, and of course, there's Dallas Goedert as well. Can't forget about him.
Yeah.
So you have all the talent in place.
We know right. We know who's here. We know all the pieces. The part of it that we can't figure out was, why was it clunky and stale last year? We already know that all these people are here, and that's what's perplexing. How do you have this duo of wide receivers, the offensive line that you have, and now you add this running back to the mix? How was the offense clunky and not creative last year? That needs to change. It starts tomorrow. Saquon Barkley, talked about the Eagles are building their offensive identity in this training camp. It's something that starts tomorrow, and we'll be all over it here. Football at 4 in the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and, of course, streaming live video on the X platform at Mike Gill Show on Twitter X. You can get us over there. Use the hashtag SB Live. All right, coming up. It's another edition of Knicks Nuggets here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And we also will have Jeff Kerr to talk a little NFL. Eagles camp, NFL camps, 23 teams open camp today. And we'll have that all for you here on the Sports Bash at 5 o'clock tonight. Jeff Kerr, NFL writer from CBS Sports, on all the stories he's looking at as we get you ready for training camp. When we come back, Knicks Nuggets are back, and that's coming up here on the Sports Bash. Plus, over-unders. I got a couple over-unders for Eagles players. Bryce Huff sacks, 6.5. What do you think?
I like the over on that one.
You like it?
I like the over.
6.5 is the number there.
It's kind of low, honestly.
Yesterday, according to some betting outlets, the Phillies are now the new favorites to win the World Series. Plus 340. The Dodgers are plus 350.
They're the kiss of death?
We'll see. All right, coming up, Knicks Nuggets. They're next here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN.
It's the Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Sports Bash 4:30. Another amazing opportunity for you at Key Acura of Atlantic City. All the 2024 MDXs in stock have to go this month, which means you got about a week, and they only got a few left. You could drive off the lot with the 2024 MDX all-wheel drive technology package for just $499 a month for 36 months with $49.95 down. That's right, $499 a month, low mileage lease. Current Acura owners get that deal. There's only a couple left. I was just over there on Tuesday, and I'm going back tomorrow morning to pick up an MDX. Now only at Key Acura, Tilton Road EHT, your small but friendly dealer. See dealer for details. Yeah, I was driving one last week. I enjoyed it so much. I dropped one off, and I'm going to go back. I texted Rocco today. I said, hey, I enjoyed my ride so much, I'm going to come back and get a different one. And, there's Knicks Nuggets. I got a different one there today. Knicks Nuggets was in for me yesterday with Josh, and now I'm back here today on the Sports Bash with another edition of Knicks Nuggets here on 97.3 ESPN. What's up, Nick?
Glad to have you back, Mike. Back in the big chair. It's nice to see you again. Listen, there's a lot we got to get to. There's a lot that's been going on over the past few days. Usually, like this, Josh and I said this yesterday. It's kind of like usually the slow part of the year. Hey, it's no slowing down here in Philly sports, that's for sure, Mike.
Nothing has been slow, right? I mean, you got Eagles back. You had Reggie Jackson signed today. Not Mr. October, but Reggie Jackson for the Sixers now. And, Philly's slumping a little bit. All the teams are in play. Mitchkoff reporting to today to Philadelphia. He's going to have a press conference tomorrow. So all 4 teams have something to talk about.
Yeah, most definitely. And I got to start with the question of the day regarding Paul George. He was introduced today, Mike, by the 76ers along with Tyrese Maxey earlier because he got his extension. And I'll tell you what, there was an interesting quote that stood out for Nugget number 1 from the Paul George press conference, and that him and Embiid had secretly been one of my closest All-Star game friends. So it seems like Joel Embiid kind of has been laying the groundwork, and they've had a prior relationship before heading into this offseason and him signing with the Sixers. I thought that was one of the nuggets that was interesting. Also, Austin Krell asked a great question from today of 97.3ESPN.com regarding where he kind of fits in and the schematics of where Paul George is going to play in the 76ers system. I thought there was a bunch of stuff there that was pretty cool to hear from Paul George. And it begs the question, is he the missing piece, Mike, to getting past the second round and ultimately a championship? In my opinion, it's not just him. It's about the other moves that they did make throughout the offseason. But adding Paul George, having him over Tobias Harris is going to be a big help. He's finally a Sixer.
Well, that's the big thing. And I think Nick Nurse, our Austin Krell, asked Nick Nurse about it. And if you go to Austin's X handle, you can see the video because you kind of see Nick Nurse's face when he's asked about it. And he kind of gives you the facial expression, tells you all you need to know about the switching of George and Harris without him throwing Harris under the bus, of basically saying swapping those two makes us a lot different. And look, there's no question. Paul George is taking the offensive burden off of Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey at times. Not every night, but at times. Tobias Harris couldn't do that. So when you say, hey, on Tuesday night in January, I don't need Joel Embiid to score 35 points for me to win this game. I can ask Paul George tonight. And then tomorrow I can go to Embiid, and he can score 30. So they now have three different guys that can win games for you because they're the best player on the court. So I think, and they mentioned it too, I think Paul George said, he said it's fair to say that to Nick, we don't want to see Joel isolating so much at the top of the key. Now I can be that guy. Tobias Harris had no handle. He couldn't put the ball on the floor. Couldn't finish around the rim.
No.
Yeah, it was bad. So
yeah, Tobias, I mean, finishing around the rim, that was an extreme struggle for him. You're not really going to get that mostly with Paul George here. It's going to be a different type of game that they're going to play. It's going to be an elevated type of game. And Paul George, even kind of mentioned it that he's going to take the pressure off of these guys for the most part, in Joel Embiid, in Tyrese Maxey. So, one night you can get Maxey having a big game. Paul George can have a big game. And taking the pressure off Embiid is huge. Just having that star power elevates you, and it elevates your rotations as well. When you have three superstars like that, you can have one on the floor at all times. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to utilize rotations, what Nick Nurse does, which matchups he likes better. Because, they've signed a ton of guards. Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, Reggie Jackson. They've signed all those type of guys. So the rotations are going to be very, very interesting to see heading into the season. But speaking of Tyrese,
by the way, even adding Reggie Jackson today and how that kind of, where is he in the rotation? What does that do to Kyle Lowry? What does that do to Eric Gordon? I guess Jared McCain. Yeah, I think Jared McCain. We had Austin on earlier, and he said he thinks McCain now starts at Delaware.
Yeah, I think McCain will probably get more run at Delaware, especially with all the veterans that they've signed at guard at this point. But if he starts cooking in Delaware, maybe you will see some Jared McCain throughout the season. So, it's going to be fascinating to watch. But I want to talk about Tyrese Maxey for a second. And Daryl Morey mentioned this today, saying how important Maxey was to this offseason because he waited to take that contract so they can make all the other moves. And that was kind of a selfless thing from Tyrese Maxey to do because he didn't have to wait. He didn't have to do that. And he was, very intrigued by what the Sixers were able to do in the offseason. So a selfless move by Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah, and I think, Maxey talking about having a bigger voice now. I think the players seeing that he gave up, that the financial ability to help this team out only makes him a bigger leader. And look, I was thinking about this today. Everybody talks about Embiid and him being the recruit guy. What player in the league would not want to play with Maxey? He just seems like the one guy that the entire league would like. Like, how could anybody not like Tyrese Maxey? And I find him to be such a valuable asset in the recruiting prospect of why players would want to play here.
Yeah, it's not just the idea of playing with the MVP and Joel Embiid. Tyrese Maxey, happy guy. He's a rising star. Why wouldn't you want to play with a Tyrese Maxey? He gets a big contract, and you've seen it. I mean, they have been able to get really good role players. You get Paul George to come in here now. They're in a really good spot if you're the 76ers. They are a better team than they were last year. There's no question about that. it's just all about health. I mean, that's literally what it comes down to. If they can get through a regular season and head into the playoffs, and it's essentially title or bust. You want to get over that second round hump, but this team is competing for a championship. Like that is the end goal here, is to win a championship. When you assemble a roster like this, you spend the amount of money you went out and spent. That, I mean, it's championship or bust at this point for the 76ers. And, you know, they have superstars now, so it's put up or shut up time.
No doubt. And listen, Austin brought it up. It's a great point that the regular season wins and anything they do, it doesn't mean all that much right now. And that's a shame, but that's what it is. And they have that pressure. And Paul George talked about the pressure, you know, acknowledging that he thinks it's going to be fun and intense playing in Philadelphia, because as I think one of the questions he was asked basically was, hey, you've played in places that just don't have a lot of media scrutiny, Oklahoma City, Indiana, and playing for the Clippers in L.A., not a lot of coverage for those teams.
No, especially, I think, I don't know if it was today or on a podcast, he essentially called the Clippers the little brother compared to the Lakers, which they are. I mean, they essentially are the little brother to the Lakers. So there's going to be...
Yeah, he said, I felt like I was on the B team.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're a little brother to the Los Angeles Lakers, and he kind of referred to them as that, and they are. And, you know, you come to Philadelphia, the sole focus is on the Sixers. The media pressure will be on Paul George. So it's going to be fascinating to watch if they can stay healthy and get this team to a playoffs healthy enough to make that run and get over the second round hump, something they haven't gotten past since 2001.
Well, we'll see it all emerge. I mean, it's funny that they continue to make moves here even on July 23rd. They signed Reggie Jackson today, and they still have one more move probably to make, as Daryl Morey admitted today that they're probably going to keep one roster spot open. They do have two spots.
Yep, so it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with the Sixers. They signed Jackson today. They're a different team than they were last year and in the years past, for sure. All right, moving on to nugget number 2. I got to go to the Phillies. I see you got the starting lineup up there if you're watching the Sports Bash on the X platform. And I'm going to talk about Jose Alvarado. We talked about him a little bit yesterday, Josh and I, with Bob Wankel and Mike McGarry. We discussed it a lot. And, you know, with Alvarado struggling, Mike, I mean, he's had an ERA just under 10 in the month of July. Like, he has not been good for a little bit now. It kind of goes back to the London series for the most part. That's kind of the start of his struggles a little bit. How much is Alvarado struggling right now? And they're probably going to send him into not high leverage situations, right? At this point, to try and maybe build him back up and get him back to being confident on the mound, because his stuff just hasn't been there in these big spots. Gave up on Friday, in the Pirates game. They lose that one on a walk-off. He's just been giving up a ton of runs, ton of hits. They've been getting contact on him. With Alvarado struggling, I mean, this has to mean that they're elevated at the deadline. Yeah, they got to go out and get a pitcher at this point. And I was making the argument yesterday on game night that it's essentially 1 and 1A, like getting a relief pitcher as well as another bat in the outfield, a right-handed bat. But I think adding another arm to the bullpen, because bullpen pitchers, they go through ebbs and flows, it feels like, from year to year. And Alvarado's kind of going through a little bit of a slump right now, and they're going to need him when they get to the postseason. But to add another arm, that could give them another option.
Well, we talked about the fact that relief pitchers are very volatile from year to year. It's hard to know what you're getting. And when you got Alvarado, he wasn't a guy you could trust, so much so that the Phillies sent him down. After he got sent down, he miraculously became one of the top left-handed relief pitchers in all of baseball. But you wonder about his consistency. And maybe you're seeing the consistency is not there right now. And one of the reasons it's not there, his command has been all over the place. What was his problem when he got here was he was a power arm that could strike out the side or walk the bases loaded at any given time. He fixed that and became dominant. Well, he doesn't have the command. He goes back to a guy who's pretty erratic. And I think that's where the Phillies are fighting right now is, hey, is he regressing back to the guy that we got, the raw arm from Tampa Bay, or is he just kind of going through a phase of, lacking command? I don't know. I do think there's some worry there that he has had a lot of workload since 2022 when they went to the World Series. After he came back from the minors, he has had a ton of workload for them, and you wonder if that's starting to catch up with him a little bit.
Yeah, that very well could be a possibility, right? That it's catching up with him right now in the middle of July. We're in the dog days of July and August throughout the summer. I don't think it'll be drastic to send him down to AAA, but I think you kind of saw on Sunday, right? They used him in a non-high leverage situation, and he was okay. So maybe that's how you get him to build back up and, be able to use him in those big situations late in games. You just start using him in the 6th inning, maybe the 7th, 5th, if you need to at some point. Just use him early on, and maybe use Gregory Soto late in games right now as you go forward for the next couple of weeks. Listen, we're only 7 days out of the trade deadline. I think this could make a little bit of an impact of what they want to do at the trade deadline. Mason Miller, the hot name around baseball. Do you want to give up a ton for a Miller? I mean, there's a Tanner Scott out there. His name's been mentioned. I brought up Carlos Estevez from the Los Angeles Angels, another arm that's been really good this year, has had opportunities to save games. So I think you got to go into this deadline adding another bullpen arm, especially if Alvarado's not going to be that same guy and you're not going to be able to use him in those big spots.
You also have to prepare for the possibility that Jeff Hoffman and Matt Strahm are not as good in the second half as they were in the first half. You have to be prepared that those guys might not be able to handle that workload. They've never shown that they're the pitchers they were in the first half of the season. So for them to do it for a whole season, that would be somewhat of a surprise, I think, anyway. I mean, yeah, they had a great first half. There's a lot of times you see guys have great first half, make the All-Star game, and then they kind of fizzle out. Now, the ones that don't fizzle out, they become perennial All-Stars. Are Jeff Hoffman and Matt Strahm perennial All-Stars, or are they guys who just had tremendous first halves of the season and then kind of come back to who they really are? Phillies better hope not.
Yeah, I mean, like heading into the postseason, if those guys aren't pulling it together, you're not going to win a lot of games. Those high leverage situations are extremely important in the playoffs. And if you don't have a bullpen to lock down those 8th and 9th innings, even the 7th at times, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And if Hoffman and Strahm fall apart, then the Phils are definitely in trouble. But Alvarado's struggling right now. It makes you wonder, all right, do we have to prioritize an arm, especially over a bat, because of how volatile, like you mentioned, bullpen arms can be from season to season, from month to month? You don't know what you're going to get. I think Hoffman and Strahm will be fine. I mean, the workload is a lot on them, but with Alvarado struggling, it would not hurt to give Rob Thompson another arm and another option, especially when you're in those big spots in the postseason, because that's really what you're going to need these guys for. You don't want to have a Craig Kimbrell situation last year where he ran out of gas. Is that a possibility that could happen this year? Absolutely could happen to one of them.
All right, Phillies lineup, by the way, is brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage, Rio Grande, moving the breeze with Clark's Moving and Storage tonight in Minnesota. Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm, Realmuto, Marsh is back. Castellanos, Stott is back. Rojas and Wheeler. So really sounds like if there was game one of a playoff series and a right-handed pitcher was pitching, this would be your lineup right here.
That would be the lineup. Marsh has been great against right-handed pitching. We just know he's just not great against lefties.
Although, do you notice one thing there is Stott and Marsh have flip-flopped.
Yeah, they've moved. I mean, Stott struggled. I mean, it makes sense that he's down in the lineup in the 8th spot. I mean, he has not produced offensively this year. And, is it a concern? Yeah, because it hasn't been like, oh, he was in a little bit of a slump and he's gotten out of it. No, he's been consistently underperforming throughout the entirety of the season.
Well,
so
it looks like it looks like you have another straight platoon happening or emerging at second base with Sosa playing there against lefties and Stott playing there against righties. You're going to have a platoon in left field as well, and we'll see what happens, as you mentioned, 7 days from the trade deadline. All right, what else we got?
It's coming soon. All right. Final nugget of the day, and I don't know if you saw this, Mike. We got another player podcast. This is a former player podcast. Jimmy Rollins and Ryan Howard are starting a podcast through Major League Baseball. I don't know if you saw this. It's called the 611 Podcast. It is a play on both their numbers when they were with the Philadelphia Phillies. Looked like their first guest was CC Sabathia of the Yankees, and clips were being put out on social media that reminiscing of the 2009 World Series and talking about plays that they forgot. I mean, Ryan Howard stole second base, and they were discussing that. None of them remembered it. Is this another podcast that you want to tune into? And are you a fan of these player podcasts? I mean, we got Podcast P. You now have Howard and Rollins. I mean, all these players are having podcasts now, Mike.
No, I don't listen to the player podcast. No, but I did see and thought that some of the podcast clips from the Ryan Howard, Jimmy Rollins, CC Sabathia conversation, I'll just look at the highlights, but I'm not listening to the whole pod. They were talking about one thing I heard CC Sabathia said, he's like, I didn't know anything about your team. Quite frankly, I didn't know you were any good. I wasn't in the National League, so I just didn't know, although that was kind of revealing. He talked about the best cheesesteak is in the visitors' clubhouse. Yep. I saw that whole thing there. So, I'm out on player podcasts. I have too many podcasts in my queue. I don't have room for another one, but the player podcast, I'll get the highlights, and you can listen to the hour-and-a-half versions.
Okay. You make Josh add it to his list, too. I know he's got 1,000 podcasts he's got to listen to, so I hope he's excited about adding another one to his list on his drive into work every day.
Well, he's got a Green Light. He listens to the New Heights. I don't know how he's got time to listen to. Well, his drive's a lot longer than mine.
Yeah. So I will be listening to this one. I want to check this one out. I might add it to my QE. But I got to slow down on some of these podcasts. My queue is a little long too, Mike. I mean, this is why I don't watch a lot of television shows, because I'm stuck on the podcast.
Do you listen to the Paul games. George?
I'm in and out on Paul George. I listened to some of his shows before he even joined the Sixers. It's not bad. It's okay.
So do you listen to the Green Light?
I do.
That's Chris Long's
Green
podcast. Yeah. That's
Green Light's pretty good. I listen to Kelsey's podcast. I listen to that one. I'm all over the place. I don't have a set in stone list. If I see an interesting episode, I'm going to tune in. So I'm all over
okay, here's a question I have. Are you someone that subscribes to a podcast?
No, I'm not a subscriber, unfortunately. Not a big subscriber. I'm just I float around and search and look and then enjoy. I don't really sub.
You don't subscribe to any podcasts?
No, I'm not a subscriber. I just kind of go and search it up myself. I don't need it in my QE. I just want to go look it up. If I see a clip on social, then I'll probably go to the podcast if it looks interesting.
So that's interesting. I'm always wondering, what kind of person each person is. Are you someone that does subscribe to a podcast so that when the new one comes out, it's in, your list of podcasts that you listen to weekly?
I'm too sporadic. I have my most listened to, and I guess that's my subscription, right? Because it comes up in my most listened to, so I'll see when the new podcast comes out. I don't subscribe. I'm just not that guy. I don't hit the subscribe button, unfortunately.
You got to hit the subscribe button to help. You got to help the people out by hitting subscribe.
I know. And as someone who is a podcaster, I should be better than that. This is holding me accountable right here, Mike, is what you're doing.
Yeah, I subscribe to probably about 12 podcasts.
Okay.
So that
you search around for the rest.
No, I just listen to those 12 or however many they are. I don't know how many specifically, but I do subscribe to them so that I don't have to go looking for them.
See, I like the search. I like the fun. It adds a little intrigue to me. Let me search this up. What comes up? Can I find something new here? I'll type in Sixers podcast, 100 will come up, and maybe I'll bounce around and check a few out. That's kind of how I roll.
Yeah, believe me, I used to be where I didn't subscribe to them, but I do find that it's a lot easier if I just subscribe.
I got to be better.
Although I will say, every podcasting platform that I've used since Google ceases to exist have all disappointed me greatly. None of them are close to Google.
You can always go to YouTube. Go to YouTube.
I have YouTube, and it's not Google. It's not nearly.
Yeah, you're an Android guy. That's why Google was easy for you. And you're a big Android guy. You got the green text messages from you and Josh. We'll get you to come to the light side over here on the Apple phone, the iPhone.
All right, man. Well, I will say this: the weather was supposed to be terrible in Altoona the other day, and everybody with their apples were telling me what their Apple weather apps were saying, and I said, "Don't trust the Apple app; they suck." And it didn't rain.
Oh, man, that's brutal. That's why I use the Weather Channel app. I use that app instead.
Yeah, don't use Apple. No, well, my Android was telling me no rain until like 3 o'clock. It actually didn't rain until even later than that.
This is how you're going to make your decision based on the weather. It's an atrocity,
Yes.
Mike. All right, I'll see you.
All right, that's it. Those are the Nuggets today. Knicks Nuggets are back tomorrow here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And this hour is brought to you by Broadleaf's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating and plumbing service installation for generations. 609-390-3907. Online at broadleafs.net. Don't forget the Sports Bash this Friday is live for its 15 years over at Giuliano's Pub and Grill. You can win Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day tickets. Come on out and see us.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
A lot of that Super Bowl credit feels like it belongs to Shane Steichen, and it belongs to Jonathan Gannon, the defensive coordinator from that Super Bowl appearance that the Eagles had a couple of years ago. So to me, this is a show and prove year, not just for Jalen Hurts, but for Nick Sirianni. Can you be an NFL head coach? Can you provide the leadership, the guidance, and the answers for your players when you hit that inevitable adversity? And 8 Ball says doubtful in my book. I haven't seen anything to show me that Nick Sirianni is going to be a championship-winning coach.
Chris Canty on Unsportsmanlike said that on 97.3 ESPN. Do you agree with Chris Canty? He says there's no evidence to him that Nick Sirianni can be the head coach this team needs. We'll get into that and more. Camp battles begin tomorrow when the team enters training camp. Nick Sirianni will talk at 9 a.m. That just came in, by the way, Jeff Kerr. Don't know if you got that email, but they moved his time from 10 to 9. Nick Sirianni will address the media, and we bring back CBS Sports intrepid NFL writer Jeff Kerr to the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff, football is back. Or didn't
it's back, Mike. It's definitely back. I'm ready, but it's funny because a lot of the teams started last week, and I was on vacation, so I'm like, you're trying to catch up to what these teams are doing. It's weird that the Houston Texans have basically had a full padded practice already, and we're probably not going to see that from the Eagles until Sunday.
Well, they also play next week, the Houston Texans do, against the Chicago Bears in the Hall of Fame game, so they get a little bit of a head start here. But we all know there's a lot of questions that need answering here. You've been writing about it over at CBS Sports. Some of the training camp questions, the cornerback spot seems to be maybe the number one most intriguing battle at Eagles camp starting tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, that definitely is. So, to me, that's going to be a fun battle, right? Because last year you had questions. Well, we didn't think you had questions last year at the cornerback position. It was who was going to back up Slay and Bradbury. Well, Bradbury was terrible. Kelee Ringo didn't see the field until December. When he did get to see the field and play, he actually looked pretty good. And then, Isaiah Rodgers having a good mini camp. Josh Jobe was a good special teamer. And again, that's a guy to watch, by the way, because he can make this team because he's a good special teamer. So he plays into the mix there. But I didn't do a 53-man roster projection yet, Mike, but I got 5 locks at cornerback. And Slay's one, Kelee Ringo, Isaiah Rodgers, and the 2 rookies, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean.
Yeah, obviously everybody's looking at the young kids there, but there's that whole group of others that have been here that we've heard a lot about. They've played a little bit, the Ringos and the Jobes and the Mekhi Gardners, and there's a whole list of those guys. Any of those guys emerge for you?
Well, I think Ringo will, at least as a solid backup, right? I think Kelee Ringo is going to help out this team this year in multiple ways. On special teams, outside cornerback, you're going to need some depth there. So, yeah, count me in on the Kelee Ringo train. And look, I think he has a chance to start week 1. It just depends what direction the Eagles want to go in. Do they want Kelee Ringo to be that guy and kind of let Quinyon Mitchell develop just a little more, or do they just throw the gas in the fire and say, you know what, Quinyon Mitchell, we drafted you in the first round. We think you're good enough. You have shown us enough. Learn next to Slay, and we'll do the trial by fire thing.
Isaiah Rodgers, strong minicamp. Where is he in the pantheon of this cornerback battle?
I think he's cornerback depth. But I think he's going to get an opportunity to play, especially a lot this preseason. That's a guy I'm going to be excited to see in these practices, in these camps. I want to see if he can pick it up with the pads on. You have certain coaches tell me, minicamp's great, but everybody's in pajamas, right? So let's see how he does with the pads on. Let's see if he's any shell of the player that we saw in Indianapolis. The Eagles there was talk they were going to try him in the slot. We never really got to see that in minicamp. I don't think that's going to be an option too. I think they would like to, but they have options there: Cooper DeJean and Avonte Maddox and Tyler Hall. So let's say Isaiah Rodgers is good depth on the outside at cornerback.
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, looking at Eagles camp, preview of their camp that starts tomorrow. We mentioned you like the one guy of the group of, the young guys is Kelee Ringo, but Eli Ricks, Josh Jobe, Tyler Hall was also signed. People forget about him. He's a legitimate and has NFL reps under his belt. Where are those guys on the depth chart for you?
I'm not going to sleep on Tyler Hall. I think he has a chance to make this team, maybe even over Avonte Maddox, depending on how things shake out. And look, Hall, he can play the slot. He's a good special teamer. I'm trying to remember if he has experience with Fangio or not. I got to look that up. But I do like what he brings. But this is such a deep room. Where does he fit into the puzzle? Can he – because DeJean ain't going anywhere. Avonte Maddox is on a one-year deal, so you don't owe him much, even though he has the experience. Can he beat out Avonte Maddox and get a slot on this team? Here's another question I want to present, Mike. There's no way this team keeps 7 corners, right?
My follow-up to you was, what's the number, 6, or do they say, you know what, we have so many guys we like here, we'll keep a 7th guy, and maybe that guy's Maddox who could play both safety and corner.
Yeah, exactly. Or Cooper DeJean, he can do that.
That's true too.
I'm the guy who says Cooper DeJean can be an all-pro safety, so you got to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Let's also bring into the conversation what happens with Bradbury tomorrow.
You know what, Mike? It's funny you mentioned that because right before I came on, I just sent in my story about 10 thoughts I have on the Eagles going into camp. It's a shame I didn't get it published before we came on here because this would have been a good topic. But topic 9 was the game of chicken with James Bradbury's coming to a head, right? Who's going to get hit by the car first? And are the Eagles really going to wait till September 1st to get rid of this guy, or are they going to settle it now? I don't know.
Why have they not done anything with him yet?
I think they're trying to get something for him, but would you trade for him right now?
That's a tough one, man. I mean, this whole thing to me is highly intriguing. Like, if I'm Vic Fangio, doesn't Bradbury fit my scheme?
You would think, right?
Right. So I at least, I guess, want to see if I'm Fangio, if last year was a case of him not fitting what they wanted him to do. And does he have anything left in the tank? Is he closer to the guy they had 2 years ago than he was last year? I think if I'm Vic Fangio, I want to see him play corner in my scheme, and then we make the decision. But they moving him to safety in the mini camps, I think put a cloud over everything.
And he fell right away, too. That was one of the most weirdest things I've ever seen at a minicamp. Like Nick just drops he's going to play safety, and then he falls right away, and then you never see him again. It's like, okay, like, are they going to get rid of this guy or not? And I'm with you, Mike. I kind of want to see what he is at quarterback, but do the Eagles want to stunt the development of Quinyon Mitchell, Kelee Ringo, Cooper DeJean, who they are going to play outside at times, Isaiah Rodgers, like, they really, and that was point 8 I made. They did any flowers you want to give this team for what they've done at cornerback, give it to them, because they figured out how to make this position probably one of the strongest on the team in literally 6 months.
We're going to have to bring you back, well, maybe on Friday's show to go through these 10 thoughts as we end the week here. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, that'll be a good list. Check it out over at cbssports.com. One of the other things you're writing about right now about Eagles camp is the concerns at linebacker. So while there's a ton of intriguing names at the corner spot, How do you feel about the names at the linebacker spot?
I still say it was an organizational malpractice what they did at that position. Like, and look, I know you can't fix everything, right? But just what they brought in, and look, I'm going off my Tampa Bay Buccaneers sources here on Devin White, but that was don't let the door hit you on the way out when it came to him. And a lot of them liked him too, said maybe a change of series, what he is, but the guy's only under a 1-year contract. It's not really guaranteed.
Well, let me ask you this question. Devin White and Nakobe Dean, if healthy, are they better than Nick Morrow and Zach Cunningham?
It can't be any worse. I mean, think about this. Zach Cunningham is not in the league right now.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't in the league at this point last year either, so yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I still remember that, Mike. If you want a good training camp story, I'm driving to the link, and I literally pull in, and I get this text. The Eagles just signed 2 new linebackers. Like, okay, and then, I'm like, okay, whatever. It's training camp. Then it's Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham. We're like, oh, no, you failed to point that one out to me.
Right.
You signed guys who could start on this team because it was that bad. And I don't think they ever liked Morrow. I actually thought they got more out of Morrow than what they thought they were going to. I thought Morrow was going to get cut last year.
Yeah. Well, he didn't make the team originally, right? They brought him back.
Exactly. So I guess we were right on that. But
what do they think Nakobe Dean is?
I don't know. I don't think they can tell you. I mean, when he was on the field last year, he wasn't good. That's what concerns me. And he's been off the field more than he's on it. I mean, he did play every game his rookie year, but he couldn't start.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy does have a knack of finding the football, but is he big enough? He's a likable guy. Like, I really like him.
Well, I mean, his story's interesting. I mean, everybody knows him from college. I mean, he's a college star. And a lot of times when you get a college star, right, when you get a college star, you're wondering how he, translates to the NFL. There are people that thought he should have been a first-round pick. When he doesn't get drafted in the first round, and now he's laced into the third round, the expectations are, holy mackerel, you got a first-round player in the third round. We've seen nothing of the sort.
Yeah, you know what? You basically got a third-round pick. Right? That's what you took a flyer on the guy.
Oren Burks and obviously Zach Bond, they're the 2 other guys. Are those guys upgrades over Nick Morrow? Or are any of those guys someone that you say that could be the X factor? Ben Van Sumeren, let's throw him in there. And then, of course, there's Jeremiah Trotter.
Van Sumeren's the guy that was an undrafted free agent last year. I like a lot more than probably a lot of other people do. I thought, watching some of his tape from last year, and again, I'm not a film genius or anything, but I did play linebacker at one point in my life. Like, wow, this guy is not a bad football player. And you're looking at a guy like him, and I'm thinking, it's unfair to compare him, but you got to compare the situation. It's TJ Edwards, right? TJ Edwards was an undrafted free agent. The Eagles gave a lot of money to, just like BVS. And Ben, TJ Edwards played a little bit at the end of his rookie year and became a star in year 2. Why can't Ben Van Sumeren do that? He's athletic. The guy played running back in college, so he can. He's athletic.
Yeah.
And with this scenario, I'd like to see him get a fair shot at winning a job. I think he's going to make this team, but I think there's a possibility he could start.
Jeremiah Trotter Jr., we know the lineage, but in your mind, is he an NFL linebacker?
I love the kid. I really do. And I'm going to be rooting. Like I said, I root for players a lot. I really want to see his kid do well. But I hope Eagles fans temper their expectations because, just because his last name's Trotter. And look, he's going to be prepared because his dad will make sure of that. But I do not want this kid starting early and failing. You know what I mean? Like, I want them to develop this kid. And I think he's a guy I can't wait to see in the preseason. I want to see what he can do. But I think he was a 5th-round pick for a reason. And I just want to give him an opportunity. I don't want him being thrown into the fire. Or as I like to tell people, remember Macho Harris, Mike Gill?
Yeah, I do. Virginia
I don't
Tech.
want him being Macho Harris, like starting and then you never hear from him again.
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports NFL. 5 breakout candidates for the Eagles he has over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Ben Van Sumeren, you have listed as one of them, as a breakout candidate. So let's go back to him for a second. Does he start over Devin White and or Nakobe Dean?
Maybe not right away, but I think at some point this season he could. And it might be Devin White, because I think Eagles are going to give Nakobe Dean every opportunity. Now, again, and I wrote about this too in my 10 thoughts, Mike. Devin White and Nakobe Dean can answer a lot of questions just by being complacent, right? You don't need them to be superstars. You just kind of need them to be not bad. And if you can do that, all of a sudden, I'm not saying they have depth at linebacker. It's still a bad position, but they can't be like, what did PFF rank them, like 29th or 30th? Do you remember? Did you see those rankings?
I did not, no.
Well, like, would you take if the Eagles were like 16th at linebacker this year?
Yeah, I mean, if they just get the year, look, when they had TJ Edwards and Kaiser White, you know, those guys didn't hurt you. They weren't guys who were playmakers or causing turnovers. They just didn't. They weren't like negatives on the field.
Don't you think it's funny how the 2 years they had linebackers, they went to the Super Bowl?
Well, you wrote about this over at CBS Sports. The best teams right now, defenses, they have good linebackers.
Yeah, every single one of them. And, you know, it's funny when I was in Baltimore last year for the playoffs, and I always like to joke about this, and I was telling a couple of the beat writers, I said, well, so this is what it's like to have a good linebacker. They're like, yeah, you guys never heard of it. I'm like, the last, and like, it was a Trotter joke. I think the last time the Eagles had a good linebacker was Jeremiah Trotter.
Right. Let's dive into a couple other guys that you list. The one guy I want to get your thoughts on is Nolan Smith, drafted at the end of the first round. People are excited. Another Georgia guy, essentially did nothing last year. So in the society that we live in today, if you don't do something as a rookie, you're generally written off. But you seem to be high on him, and so is Darius Slay.
Yeah, and again, Howie Roseman said this, he should have played more last year.
But where does he fit? Where does he fit in, I guess? You got Bryce Huff, Josh Smith, Josh Sweat. Where does he fit in?
I think he's the third guy in that rotation, right? I think Brandon Graham's going to play more than a lot of people think. That's another, because that, again, I'm glad you brought this up, Mike, because that's another thing I wrote about. They're here. You know, the concerns on the pass rush are legitimate, right? Bryce Huff has never played over 50% of the snaps. Do we really think he's going to be a Hassan Reddick? If he is, awesome. Or if he is like that next year, even better. But for 2024, wouldn't you think this team would have been? And I know, and look, I'm not blaming the Eagles for it. I agree with them 100% on the business front of it. But the talent front, I think they would have been better off keeping Hassan Reddick this year, just paying him for 1 year.
Well, yeah. Well, what do you think of the whole Reddick thing now? I mean, this thing has turned into an interesting mess, huh?
I'm not shocked. I mean, he wants a contract. He deserves a contract. He's grossly underpaid. He's retweeted me once when I said that. He was grossly underpaid.
Weird situation. All right, couple more for Jeff. Breakout players, you have Cooper DeJean. Now, it's hard for a rookie to be a breakout player, but you included him. Why?
All right, Mike, here's a trivia question for you. You don't have to answer if you don't need to. Do you know the last rookie quarterback to start before week 5 for the Eagles?
Last rookie?
Yes.
Last rookie corner.
You're going to have to think back here. And he was a really good football player.
No. I mean, you're going Roynell Young?
You're not that far back, but Eric Allen.
Okay, Eric Allen. That's a while back.
I mean, the guy. I was going to say the guy should probably be in the Hall of Fame. If we're being honest with ourselves, but yeah, I mean that's how long it's been, and you might have two guys in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean that could start for this team week 1. I think Cooper DeJean they're going to use a lot. They're going to use him at outside corner. I think you're going to see him in the slot. I think we'll see him in safety at times maybe as a punt returner. I doubt he'll take that job from Covey, but he can do it. I mean, the guy is kind of the do it all for you, Dolly, in the secondary, and that was why, it's funny how you rethink things, right? If someone would told me the Eagles would have drafted Cooper DeJean at 22, I'd be like, yeah, okay. But you draft him at 40, and you're like, oh, man, what a steal. What a, kind of like the Kobe Dean thing, right? But I keep watching, you know me, Mike. I watch a lot of Big Ten football, and I think this guy could be an all-pro safety if they would put him there. I really do. I think he has all the tools to be a stud at safety, but I like him at slot corner too.
Well, you say slot corner. We didn't really talk a lot about Avonte Maddox, but, do you enter camp with Avonte Maddox as your top slot guy?
I think you enter camp with Avonte Maddox as your top slot guy. But as we all know, things can change, right? You enter camp as Tyler Steen as your top right guard. But will he be that in 6 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mekhi Becton. It's funny how we didn't get to Mekhi Becton yet.
All right, well, listen. There's so many questions on defense. The offense, you feel now this whole offensive conversation regarding Sirianni and the offensive play calling, and he's kind of given everything over to Kellen Moore. And what do you make of what has transpired in the Diana Rossini, Chase Daniel Scoop City podcast? Was there any revealing stuff in that for you? Not to me. I mean. It's just regurgitation of information we probably already know. I mean, her interview with Saquon Barkley was great, by the way, but it's nothing I haven't heard. I'll just say that. But this is what I think. I think it's been very unfair to the Eagles organization that they have had to deal with this dark cloud on a good all season if Jalen Hurts gets along with the head coach or not. Because Jalen has seemed to avoid every single opportunity. Well, I mean, all right, let's get into this real quick. Do you think there's a rift there? I don't know. I really don't. Like, if there was, maybe there was a rift. All right, so let me ask you. The coach is back. Now, there people are suggesting he wasn't actually on the hot seat, and Lori thinks he's like an Andy Reid type of level, yada, yada, all that stuff. But don't you think that they had to sit down with them individually? Hey. They had to, right? Jalen, do you get along with Sirianni? Can you continue this relationship? And if he says, no, guys, I don't think I can, Sirianni's gone, right? Exactly. I think if there was a riff, it was during last year on how things were handled at the end of the season. I think it's a new year, a new dawn. And maybe Hurts doesn't want to, but Hurts, I think, needed to go out and say better than the answer we got. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. And it sucks for the Eagles that they have to deal with this. It really does. It does suck. I don't know, man. We'll see a lot tomorrow. It all start out to see the first thing you're looking at. I'm imagining if Jeff Kerr's standing on the sidelines tomorrow and you were able to stand there and watch the whole practice. I know they don't let you do that, but the first thing you're watching would be what? Ooh. For my excitement, the secondary, because I'm excited to see how that turns out. Definitely the defense. I think the defense is something that we're going to have to monitor all year. Look, and I have said this before. If Vic Fangio could turn this defense into a top half defense or 16, that's a win. Because, remember, this team won 11 games last year, and their defense was brutal. Brutal. Yeah, well, listen. There was a lot of questions about last year that we can't answer with the way they finished that season. One thing I want to see is what does that offense look like? Because what we saw at the end of last year was, I don't even know how to explain what we saw at the end of last year. Mike, as a radio guy, when did you kind of stop talking about that collapse? I don't know that we ever have. I mean, I think anytime you're talking football throughout the offseason, with any chance you get, you're trying to pick someone's brain. We had Fletcher Cox on at the Super Bowl. We asked him. We had, various insiders and reporters and former players all throughout the offseason to get their opinion on it. Nobody seems to have the right, or I don't know if there is a right or wrong answer. Everybody seems to have a different opinion on it. It's a collection of answers, right? Yeah. And, I just think it's funny in week 12 of last season, you would never, ever in a million years question Jalen Hurts' leadership. And all of a sudden, 7 weeks later, you're questioning his leadership. Well, that's the funny part because, when he got drafted, the first thing, or the year that, they traded Wentz and now you have, him take over, Hurts, nobody said, man, this guy has a great arm or he's overly accurate or he's a great decision maker. The one thing universally everybody said was, man, he's a great leader. This is the sports psychologist in me. I don't have a psychology degree, but I've taken a couple classes on this.
I'm big in the whole winning and losing thing. I think when you're a winning player, pretty much your whole life, right? This guy has won his entire life. His teams have won. When has Jalen Hurts ever lost 6 or 7 in anything?
Probably never. I don't know. He's lost 7 games.
He
probably hasn't lost 7 games in his high school collegiate career combined.
Yeah. Do you think he knows how to handle that? Like, it's funny, right? Because I've been on the opposite end. I was on football teams growing up. This is before high school. I was on an 8th grade team that went 0-10, but we had 10 all-league players because we only had 14 kids. But you can't win with 14 kids in a whole football team. You can't.
It all starts tomorrow at the NovaCare Complex. And, of course, Nick Sirianni talking at 9 o'clock. All of these questions will start to get answered, and we're glad to have him back. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We're looking forward to your 10 Thoughts article. We'll have to get you on later in the week, man.
Oh, yeah. You know what's funny? It's all like before like the practices start, but they're all gonna be relevant, Mike. I'll just give you a preview here. It's like Saquon Barkley. It's the third wide receiver. It's Jalen Hurts. It's Nick Sirianni. It's Kellen Moore. But by the way, I have to add this with Kellen Moore. I don't think 95% of the offense is new, but I think it's new terminology for him.
Well, guess what? I can't wait to see it.
Yep.
All right, man. We'll talk to you. All right,
Thanks,
Jeff Kerr,
man.
everybody, CBS Sports here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff's 10 thoughts on the Eagles. We'll check them out later on this week, potentially on Happy Hour Friday. We're celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash this Friday and Fridays throughout the summer. Happy Hour Friday will be on the road. You know, Happy Hour Fridays become something that we look forward to every week. First off, it's Friday, but we get educated on new brews all over South Jersey, and we look forward to that this Friday. You know, we're going to be at Giuliano's Pub and Grill, 2264 Ocean Heights Avenue. One of the brews they do have at Giuliano's is Broken Heels New Trail, which is out of Williamsport, PA. I just was in Altoona, PA, and there was a brewery down there called Levity. They had a beer called Play the Song. Pretty good one. And another one called Haze Freely, a homage to the Ace Freely, Kiss. So had some good ones over the week here, but looking forward to Friday, Happy Hour Friday, 15 years of the Sports Bash. And thanks to our friends at Bud Light. They're going to be sponsoring the whole summer long, 350 Bud Light draft specials, neutral vodka seltzers. If you're one of those seltzer drinkers, we got it all for you. And I got tickets to the Smashing Pumpkins Green Day show at Citizens Bank Park, which, well, it looks like I'm going to be going to now because I'm not going to the World Series, unfortunately. But that means I get to see Smashing Pumpkins, which is one of my favorite bands of all time. And I got tickets for you guys out there celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. Come out this Friday and have a beer with me and the Sports Bash at Giuliano's Pub and Grill in Egg Harbor Township.
Today, we have the perfect solution for sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
It was Nick Sirianni's show. Everything you saw on that field was Sirianni. And from just having a few discussions with people in Philadelphia, it just seems that Nick just wanted to do it his way. And he's the head coach. If that's what he wants to do.
Seems like it wore him down, though, throughout the year. Like, you can see his bags under his eyes. You can see everything. It's, like, too much for a head coach.
Diana Rossini, Chase Daniel, Scoop City podcasts from The Athletic. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Nick Sirianni, he wanted it to be his offense, but it seems that it no longer will be his offense. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Big Three. We've got a lot to discuss in today's edition of the Big Three here on the Sports Bash.
So, Mike, I kind of want to take you on a little journey here, okay, for the Big Three, because there are 3 different layers to this Sirianni conversation. So, while you were away in Altoona, PA, away from the real world, back here in South Jersey, we were trying to decipher, me and Nick Earnshaw, this whole Nick Sirianni situation, because the second episode of the Scoop City podcast, Diana Rossini breaks into all the details of what went wrong last year and what to expect from this year. And I found some crossover between other reports that we have heard previously on the Sports Bash. To just give you, Mike, a little bit of a background, part of the conversation between her and her co-host Chase Daniel on the podcast was about Sirianni and what went wrong last year and how this year is different. And they made some very interesting comments about what went wrong last year, because Chase Daniel says to Diana Rossini, well, they started 10-1, to which Diana Rossini's response was this.
Those 10 wins were a grind from what I was told. It was explained to me that just because they were getting W's, that doesn't mean that behind the scenes it was perfect and it was just this winning culture at all times. Every win felt like a really big feat for them because of the challenges that they were facing in terms of what they were doing on offense.
That is, what's the word here? Man, it is quite pretty powerful to hear that. Like, to hear, like, they won 10 games, but it was a grind. You never felt that way. You felt that they were winning and finding ways to win, and good teams find ways to win, and that was the feeling is, man, they just keep finding ways to win. Like, they're not playing their best, but they're still winning these games.
Right.
That's why the dynamic is so weird, because if it's a grind, you're not grinding out wins against Buffalo and
Kansas
City and
the
Cowboys game. They were beating high-level playoff teams. I can understand if it's a grind because you're grinding out a win against the Giants or Arizona. Now, you lost to those teams later on in the year, but I'm talking about in the 10-game win streak, you're grinding out wins against Super Bowl contending teams. That's what makes this thing exasperating, to use a Josh word.
That's a good Josh word right there you use. So, but what's interesting in total Josh fashion is I remember us playing 2 weeks earlier, Lane Johnson saying something similar.
What we were doing collectively obviously wasn't making a whole lot of sense, and really was a tale of two teams. But even when we did have the record of 10-1, a lot of these games were very tight games and could have gone either way. You can look back at some of those games and feel like you left, 2 scores, 3 scores on the board, and that's kind of how it felt all season.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite flabbergasting, if you will, that this is the way that they felt with those wins. It's like, hey, we beat Kansas City. We beat Buffalo. That stretch of games where they had those tough playoff-level teams, and they were finding ways to win. You're like, man, they're just finding ways to win. And I remember talking about this after the Dallas game, which was, look, the Eagles are saying, you're going to have to play our style of football. You're going to have to get uncomfortable to beat us. You know what I'm saying? You have to be able to get into a fist fight. If you don't want to fist fight us, you're not going to beat us.
Right.
And I don't know what happened to that team.
It's a great question. It was like they completely lost their way. And it seems like, based on the different reporting and different players out there, that the coaching was the major issue. Now, if you want to say Sirianni because he's the head coach, maybe he was part of the problem because maybe he was not focused up on doing his main job. Sirianni admitted that to the media during a sit-down recently. The Athletic published some quotes from that media roundtable where Sirianni said, well, at the end of the day, I have to do what's best for the team, and sometimes it's hard, right? I won't lie to you, it was hard, but I knew in my gut what was best for the team. I see a lot of positives in that, what he means by giving up the play calling and the responsibilities. Says, quote, we brought in Kellen, I letting him run the offense. We share the same thoughts, and he goes with it. Sirianni went on to say, I didn't call the plays last year.
Yeah, I don't know that people thought he called the plays.
But apparently
they thought it was his offense.
It was his offense.
Right. It was somebody else calling his plays. That's the bizarre part of the whole situation. Hey, Josh, I want you to do the 4-hour show, but I'm going to give you the topics. Now, that's fine if we're collaborating on it.
Correct.
But if I just say, I don't want to hear your collaboration. I just want you to talk about these.
Right.
Now, you could do it.
Sure.
But they might not be what you're most passionate about.
And also, they might not be something that I am going to execute as well as you would if you were on the
right. Because listen, in our industry, it is quite normal for a producer to come up with topics and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" But there's a collaboration there. I don't think in that situation it's quite normal for someone to say, "These are my plays. I designed them. I want you to call them."
And
why would you think that would ever work?
And that's what's so weird. And that's what Rossini explained on the pod that she believes was really where the rub was last year between Sirianni and Hurts and some of this perception that they might not get along. She points to some of it had to do with the offense last year.
We've seen Jalen on the sideline with Nick, and it never looked like they were going at one another, but you could tell there was definitely a difference in personality. So the way I would describe it is it's a relationship that's a work in progress, right? So last year, there was some disconnect, right, between them in their personalities. Nick, we've seen, he's a very emotional guy. Jalen is a very private guy. They are different human beings, which is fine. That's okay. You don't all have to be the same, but you do have to be on the same page.
Yeah, that's the big part there. You have friends that are completely different from you. Different personalities. He's the flamboyant one. He's the loud guy. He's the introvert guy. You don't have to have the same exact personality as your friend, but if you go into a bar and you're hanging out with that guy, you got to be on the same page. Hey, man, I'm not getting to a fist fight for you tonight, right?
Right. Well, I was going to say, bringing it back to how you and I work together, you and I have very different personalities.
That's for sure.
We come from different backgrounds, different, cultural environments, basically, but we have a common goal. And because of our common goal and because of our desire to do the best we can every single day, we collaborate and we get on the same page. And it seems like because of everything that happened last year, because of Sirianni and Hurts's very different ways of coming to the table, they were never able to fully connect, and that impacted the team as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, listen, again, I go back to there had to be discussion in the offseason with the two of them in the same room or different rooms and say, can you guys coexist? Do you not like each other? Is there a problem here? Yeah. I can't imagine that you don't get to that level of organization and Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman saying, guys, is there something going on here?
And that gets back to the report that came out over the weekend. So after Diana Rossini came out with this pod, Mike, over the weekend, Marcus Hayes, the Philadelphia Inquirer, spoke to a former Eagles front office executive, which, considering how many different former Eagles front office executives there have been in the last couple of years, I'm sure we could probably decipher maybe if we tried hard enough to figure out which one it might be. But according to that former executive, he says that the reason why Nick Sirianni is here, you mentioned Jeffrey Lurie. Jeffrey Lurie believes that Sirianni is, quote, the next Andy Reid because Sirianni is, and this is from the article, quote, a football nerd, a maniacal teacher, a passionate leader with the capacity to become an excellent administrator, a skill that took Reid more than a decade to master. So based on what Marcus Hayes reported, it really sounds like, Mike, that Sirianni is definitely here because Jeffrey Lurie wants him here. And like you said, there's no way Jeffrey Lurie is going to keep Sirianni if he thinks there's some issue between him and the quarterback.
I agree. I don't think that he is. Look, this team has cut ties with Wentz. They've eaten the salaries. They've taken the dead money. I don't think that would preclude them from saying, you know what, Nick Sirianni, you're not the right guy. We did it with Doug Peterson. We got to move on. Who does their loyalties lies with? That's going to be interesting.
Which brings me to the third layer of what came out over the weekend, which is something that we heard 6 months ago. Mike, can I take you in the time machine for a minute? Back in February, ESPN Sal Paolantonio, Sal Pal Fridays, a staple of the football season, he told Mike Gill this 6 months ago.
Nick Sirianni may be calling some of his friends, but he's not in any position at all in his organization. I think we can agree on this, to hire somebody. He may recommend somebody, but he's not hiring the offensive or defensive coordinators, that's for sure.
6 months later, Diana Rossini says this.
It's Howie Roseman that has the power now. And look, he always has the power, right?
Not now.
That's nothing new for Philadelphia. But in terms of moving forward into this season, Howie had his hands all over the decisions when it came to the coordinator position. And when they made change at defense.
Which is not normal, by the way, for everyone listening, for a GM to have his hand in coordinator positions.
Yeah, somebody brought up that we saw in the Hard Knocks this week where Brian Daboll walks in and says, I'm going to, offer
Hire Shane Bowen.
the defensive coordinator job to Shane Bowen. So this is an example of the coach telling the GM, I'm going to offer it to this particular guy.
Yeah, in most organizations, apparently, the GM and the owner do not dictate to the head coach his coaching staff. But as we know in Philadelphia, that is part of the reason why Doug Peterson is not here. And when I heard Diana Rossini say that last week, Mike, I got a little deja vu from Sal Pal Friday 6 months ago.
It's a good pull there. Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Sirianni, they're trying to make it like he was never on the hot seat. Like it wasn't even being considered. But, and we always wondered, did Sirianni just say the right things? Did he come in and say, listen, if you guys want to make changes, I'm open to changes? Whereas Peterson said, I'm not making the changes.
Correct. And that's, I think, where the interesting caveat is, because Doug Peterson came from the Andy Reid tree. Doug Peterson won you a Super Bowl, but you told Doug to pack his bags. Nick Sirianni, from a completely different coaching tree, completely different coaching background, but he's the one that, according to reports, Jeffrey Lurie views as the next Andy Reid. And there must be something about this Sirianni guy that the owner and the players and the former players all seem to like this guy, and which is bizarre to me, because then you have someone like Chris Canning, we played the audio earlier, where he thinks Nick Sirianni is not a championship-winning coach, but everyone in the Eagles organization thinks otherwise.
Yeah, and Canning, I think it's how would he know on the outside of the locker room to know what kind of relationship he has with the players. So, I mean, while he can have that opinion, and I'm not going to be critical of the opinion, I can disagree with it. He got to a Super Bowl. He took the team to the playoffs multiple times. Now, you might say that's on the backs of the coordinators that you have, and I might say, fine, he had strong coordinators. Andy had strong coordinators here.
Yes, he did.
And when the team did not go so well, Andy didn't, his coordinator started to get plucked.
Right, and then he replaced it with Juan Castillo.
That wasn't very good.
that was the beginning of the end for sure.
That was not good. A lot of interesting stuff here. Good to have the Eagles back. They practice tomorrow. Nick Sirianni, 9 o'clock tomorrow. We'll have the audio here on the Sports Bash. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, this Friday, Happy Hour Friday, celebrating 15 years of the Sports Bash. We'll be at Giuliano's in Egg Harbor Township. Come on out, hang for a beer, the full 4 hours after the show. But stop out. Let us know how long you've been listening to the show, when you first started listening. We'll be at Giuliano's in Egg Harbor Township. Bud Light, Neutral Vodka Seltzers, they'll be on special for the whole day, plus Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day tickets. We hope to see you all out there. We'll finish up the show coming up next.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Baker's, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Baker's worth it every time. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, Mike Gill with you here, getting ready to get out on a Tuesday night. And What's tonight? Anything?
Phillies are on.
No
on,
Summer League.
Phillies.
Summer League's over.
Summer League's over. Thank God.
No Summer League. Phil's tonight. Training camp tomorrow.
Got the Olympics this weekend. Any interest?
Does it start this weekend?
Yeah.
Wow. I did watch the USA South Sudan game.
Royal Ivy, Coach of the Year.
Yeah, you know the guy, Mariel Sayak. He was a Sixer draft choice.
Yes, Nick Earnshaw reminded me of that about 5 times yesterday.
I always marvel at the fact that, like, some of these guys in these Olympics that, like, no one's ever heard of, and they go out there and they perform, and then, like, no one goes out and gets them. And they, like, how do you perform so well in a game like that, and you tell me that guy can't compete at the NBA level?
It's bizarre.
But he just played against the best players the NBA has to offer. But I say all the time.
Took him to the brink.
Yeah, I say all the time, you know, the style of play that we have created here in the States is not conducive to, no, listen, they're going to win because they just have the most talented, they should win because they have the most talented team. But if they don't win, it goes to show yet again that the one-on-one nature that we've created in this country is not conducive to winning at the highest level.
By the way, South Sudan is on Team USA round-robin schedule next week.
Wow, so they get a rematch.
They get a rematch.
The spread was 43.5.
Not going to be that anymore. No. Probably more like 20.
Thanks for listening today, of course, and all our guests, Frank Close, Austin Krell, Adam Kaplan, Jeff Kerr. Check them out on our YouTube channel. All our interviews posted on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to get all the Sports Bash interviews. Josh has game night next, and I'll talk to you tomorrow right here on the Sports Bash. Have a great night, everybody.
America. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By honoring your sacred vocation of business, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. At Grand Canyon University, our MBA degree program is 100% online, with emphases in business analytics and finance to help you reach your goals. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.